when the best witness we can bring before this has already been convicted of lying before us. And what's sad is the American people have seen this play out before. We have people in prominent positions fail, and then a couple years later they get a book deal. Now you're set to go to jail for a couple years. You come out with a multi-million book deal. That's not bad living. And so my question is will you today to commit to donate any further proceeds to book deals, to film reviews, to charity?
No.
Thank you. I yield my
Will,
time.
will the gentleman yield?
Now,
Will the gentleman yield?
now,
yield.
may I finish?
Will the gentleman yield?
Yield to Mr. Meadows.
Mr. Chairman, may I finish?
Mr. Cohen,
May I finish my?
Mr. Cohen, he's yielded to me, and so
I didn't finish, sir, my response.
Listen,
I'm
everything's
asking
been made.
Mr. Chairman, may I finish my response, please?
I'll let you respond, but answer his question, please.
Mr. Cohen, everything's been made of your lies in the past. I'm concerned about your lies today. Under your testimony just a few minutes ago, to me, you indicated that you had contracts with foreign entities, and yet we have a truth and testimony disclosure form which requires you to list those foreign contracts for the last 2 years, and you put NA on there. And it's a criminal offense to not have that accurately. So when were you lying? Either in the testimony to me earlier today or when you filled out the form?
The gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Cohen, you may answer his question and then whatever you wanted to say on that.
His question is, unfortunately, I don't have an answer for his question. But as
No, Mr. Chairman.
As it relates,
the gentleman is out of order. He said he does not have an answer.
Mr. Chairman, when we were in the majority, with all due respect, Mr. Chairman, hold on.
Regular order. The gentleman has just said he doesn't have an answer, and you had already gone over your time.
He's under oath to tell the truth. One of them is not accurate, Mr. Chairman.
You will have time to answer the question.
Mr. Chairman, just a question. Mr. Chairman, just a question.
Mr. Raskin. Mr. Raskin.
Mr. Cohen, thank you for your composure today. Our colleagues are not upset because you lied to Congress for the president. They're upset because you stopped lying to Congress for the president. Now, you've described the Trump campaign as a once-in-a-lifetime money-making opportunity, the greatest infomercial of all time, I think you said, and this may be the most trenchant observation of your whole testimony. Do you think the Trump campaign or presidency ever stopped being about making money for the president, his family, and his organization?
yes,
When did it stop being that?
when he won the election.
And what did it become about at that point?
Then it had to be about figuring out what to do here in Washington.
Can you carefully explain to America how the hush money payments to Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels worked? Can you carefully explain what catch and kill is?
Sure. I received a phone call regarding both Karen McDougal as well as Stormy Daniels, obviously at different times, stating that there were issues that were going to be damaging to Mr. Trump. With the Stormy Daniels, it started in 2011 when she wanted to have something removed from a website. And that was the first time I met Keith David. I spoke with Keith Davidson, her then acting attorney. And we were successful in having it taken down from the website. It wasn't until years later, by around the time of the campaign, did they come back and they ask, what are you going to do now, because she's back on the trail trying to sell the story. At which point in time, David Pecker, on behalf of the National Enquirer, reached out to her and her attorney in order to go take a look at lie detector test that would prove that she was telling the truth. They then contacted me and told me that she was telling the truth, at which point, again, all the time.
She took a lie detector test.
She allegedly took a lie detector test and was seen by an employee of the National Enquirer. At which point in time, I went straight into Mr. Trump's office and I explained why this time it's different than another time.
Okay, now when you say different than another time, were there other women paid sexual hush money by Donald Trump or his organization? Was this a standard operating practice?
No.
So you're not aware of any other cases where it had taken place?
I'm not aware of any other case that Mr. Trump paid. So which brings us to the Karen McDougal. He was supposed to pay. He was supposed to pay $125,000 for the life story of Karen McDougal. For whatever the reason may be, he elected not to pay it. David Pecker was very angry because there was also other monies that David had expended on his behalf. Unfortunately, David never got paid back for that either.
So David Pecker had done this in other cases of other mistresses or women?
Other circumstances, yes.
Okay.
Not all of them had to do with women.
Are you aware of anything that the president has done at home or abroad that may have subjected him to or may subject him to extortion or blackmail?
I am not, no.
Okay. Are you aware of any videotapes that may be the subject of extortion or blackmail?
I've heard about these tapes for a long time. I've had many people contact me over the years. I have no reason to believe that that tape exists.
In December 2015, Donald Trump was asked about his relationship with Felix Sater, a convicted felon and real estate developer, and he replied, "Felix Sater, boy, have to even think about it. I'm not that familiar with him." Why did Trump endeavor to hide his relationship with Felix Sater, and what was his relationship?
Well, he certainly had a relationship. Felix was a partner in a company called Bayrock that was involved in the deal of the Trump Soho Hotel, as well as, I believe, the Trump Fort Lauderdale project. Why did he want to distance himself? That's what Mr. Trump does. He distances himself when things go bad for someone. And at that point in time, it was going bad for Mr. Sater.
You said you lied to Congress about Trump's negotiations to build his Moscow tower because he made it clear to you that he wanted you to lie. One of the reasons you knew this is because, quote, Mr. Trump's personal lawyers reviewed and edited my statement to Congress about the timing of the Moscow tower negotiations before I gave it. So this is a pretty breathtaking claim, and I just want to get to the facts here. Which specific lawyers reviewed and edited your statement to Congress on the Moscow tower negotiations, and did they make any changes to your statement?
There were changes made, additions. Jay Sekulow, for one.
Were there changes about the timing? The question of...
Gentleman's time has expired. You may answer that question.
There were several changes that were made, including how we were going to handle that message,
Mr.
which
Grover,
was...
were you finished?
Yes, the message, of course, being the length of time that the Trump Tower Moscow project stayed and remained alive.
That was one of the changes.
Yes.
Mr. Grothman.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to clear up something, just a little something that bothers me. You started off your testimony, and you said, I think in response to some question, that President Trump never expected to win. I just want to clarify that I dealt with President Trump several times as he was trying to get Wisconsin. He was always confident. He was working very hard. And this idea that somehow he was just running to raise his profile for some future adventure, at least in my experience, is preposterous. And I'll find it offensive when anti-Trump people imply that he just did this on a lark and didn't expect to win. But be that as it may, my first question concerns your relationship with the court. Do you expect, I mean, right now I think you're sentenced to 3 years, correct?
That's correct.
Do you expect any time using this testimony, other testimony, after you get done doing whatever you're going to do this week, do you ever expect to go back and ask for any sort of reduction in sentence?
Yes, there are ongoing investigations currently being conducted that have nothing to do with this committee or Congress that I am assisting in, and it is for the benefit of a Rule 35 motion, yes.
So you expect, and perhaps what you testify here today will affect going back and reducing this, what we think is a relatively light 3-year sentence. You expect to go back and ask for a further reduction?
Based off of my appearance here today?
Well, based upon whatever you do between now and your request for...
The Rule 35 motion is in the complete hands of the Southern District of New York. And the way the Rule 35 motion works is what you're supposed to do is provide them with information that leads to ongoing investigations. I am currently working with them right now on several other issues of investigation that concerns them that they're looking at. If those investigations become fruitful, then there is a possibility for a Rule 35 motion. And I don't know what the benefit in terms of time would be. But this congressional hearing today is not going to be the basis of a Rule 35 motion. I wish it was, but it's not.
I'd like to yield some time to Congressman Jordan.
I yield to the gentleman from North Carolina.
Mr. Cohen, I'm going to come back to the question I asked before with regards to your false statement that you submitted to Congress. On here, it was very clear that it asked for contracts with foreign entities over the last 2 years. Have you had any foreign contract with foreign entities, whether it's Novartis or the Korean airline or Kazakhstan BTA Bank? Your testimony earlier said that you had contracts with them. In fact, you went into detail.
I believe
on
it talks about lobbying. I did no lobbying. On top of
in
that,
your
they are
testimony,
not government.
I'm not asking about lobbying, Mr. Cohen.
They
I'm
are
saying,
not government agencies.
Do you have
privately
foreign
or publicly
contracts?
traded companies.
Do you have foreign contracts?
I currently have no foreign.
Did you have foreign contracts over the last 2 years?
Foreign contracts?
Contracts with foreign entities. Did you have
Yes.
contracts? Yes.
Yes.
Why didn't you put them on the form? It says it's a criminal offense to not put them on this form for the last 2 years. Why did you not do that?
Because those foreign companies that you're referring to are not government companies.
It says non-governmental, Mr. Cohen. You signed it.
They're talking about me as being non-governmental.
And right, it says foreign agency. It says foreign contracts. Do you want us to read it to you?
I read it, and it was reviewed by my counsel, and I am a non-government employee. It was not lobbying, and they are not foreign.
This has nothing to do with lobbying. It says it's a criminal offense to not list all your foreign contracts. That's what it says.
Well, then I'm going to take a look at it before I leave.
No, you've heard it.
I will, and hopefully I will amend it prior to leaving, because that's not the way I read your document.
You know, it's just one more example, Mr. Cohen, of you skirting the truth. Okay, I want to ask one other question.
Sir,
one other question, Mr. Cohen. It's my time, not yours. Were you advised, or was your counsel advised, to withhold your written testimony to the latest possible date, as John Dean said last night on CNN?
Was it my what?
Were you advised, or was your counsel advised, to withhold your written testimony to this committee at the latest possible date, to get it to this committee at the latest possible date, as John Dean said that he advised you? Yes or no?
No. We will.
He never advised you.
John Dean? I've never spoken with John Dean.
Has he spoken to your attorney?
I don't know. I've never spoken
Well,
to
ask
John
your
Dean.
attorney. He's right
We were
there behind
working
you.
last night till 11, 12 o'clock at
You've
night.
known
in
that
order
you've
to
been
finish.
coming for some time.
You may answer the question. Answer the question.
We were working till 11, 12 o'clock last night to finish everything.
So you were writing it last night, Mr. Cohen?
we were
Don't
making
give me
edits.
that bull.
We were making edits all the way through the night.
Recognize Mr. Ruda.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cohen, in November 2013, President Donald Trump testified under oath in a lawsuit related to the failed real estate project, Trump International Hotel and Tower in Fort Lauderdale. During the deposition, President Trump was asked about his knowledge of Felix Sater, a Russian-born real estate developer and convicted member of the Russian mafia, who, according to press reports, pled guilty for his role in a $40 million stock manipulation scheme. And it's worth noting, as well publicized, the direct relationship between the Russian mafia and the Kremlin. Over the years, President Trump was asked how many times he interacted with convicted Russian mobster Felix Sater. In 2013, President Trump testified that, quote, "Not many. If he were sitting in the room right now, I really wouldn't know what he looked like," unquote. Mr. Cohen, as you previously testified, isn't it true that President Trump knew convicted Russian mobster Felix Sater in 2013 when he made that statement?
Yes.
Isn't it true that because of Mr. Sater's relationship to the Trump organization, that he had an office in the Trump Tower?
And on the 26th floor, Mr. Trump.
And the 26th floor is important. Why?
Because it's Mr. Trump's floor.
So he had an office on the same floor as President Trump.
In fact, his office, when he left, became my office.
And isn't it also true that convicted Russian mobster Sater even had business cards indicating that he was a senior advisor to Donald Trump, as reported by the Washington Post?
Yes.
Did convicted Russian mobster Sater pay rent for his office?
No, he did not.
So, based on those facts, isn't it true that President Trump misled at best, or worse, lied under oath?
Yes.
In December 2015, President Trump was asked again about his relationship to convicted Russian mobster Mr. Sater by a reporter for the Associated Press. He stated, quote, "Felix Sater, boy, I have to even think about it," unquote. He added, quote, "I'm not that familiar with him," unquote. Mr. Cohen, where would we find business records that explain the president's relationship to the convicted Russian mobster Felix Sater? Would those be in the Trump Organization's files?
They'd be in the Trump Organization's files. There would be CCs to Bayrock, which was the name of Mr. Sater's company. I suspect on Mr. Sater's email address, possibly hard files in possession of Mr. Sater.
And when you say in possession of the Trump Organization, where?
It depends upon who the attorney was that was working on it. Now it would probably be in a box, off-site. They have storage facility that they put old files.
In addition to convicted Russian mobster Sater, do you know of any other ties to convicted or alleged mobsters President Trump may have?
I am not aware.
Is it true that many people with ties to Russia ultimately bought condos in Trump properties, usually for cash? And if so, how many are we talking? 10, 20, 50?
I'm not, honestly, sir, I'm not aware of any. The statement that you're referring to, I believe, was made by either Eric or Don, and I don't agree with it.
So are you aware of any cash purchases by Russian oligarchs and family members of Trump properties?
I'm not aware of that. I can tell you, when you say cash, if you mean walking in with a satchel of rubles, the answer is I've never seen that happen. I've never heard of it. I will tell you, when we sold Mr. Trump's property in Palm Beach, the home for $95 million, it came in by wire, and that came from Mr. Rabolovyev's bank account.
One other question. You also talked about President Trump doing negotiations throughout the campaign regarding the Trump Tower in Moscow. Was he directly involved in those negotiations? And if so, how do you know?
Well, the answer is yes. And as it relates to negotiations, it was merely follow-ups as to what's currently happening, what's happening with Russia, meaning he wanted me to give him a status report. The problem with this is that the project never advanced because they were unable, Mr. Sater was unable to provide me with proof that somebody owned or controlled a piece of property that we can actually build on.
The gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Marsh.
Mr. Cohen, why did Mr. Trump choose to hire you, and why did he trust you with the various tasks that you performed for him?
I don't know, sir. You would have to ask him that question.
Well, we've heard here that you have bad character. You've admitted to that over the years. You have no idea why he chose to hire you.
In 2006, I was asked by Don Jr. to come meet with his father. I did. He then followed up by asking if I would take a look at an issue that was occurring at Trump World Tower with the board. I went ahead and I looked into it, and I found that the statements that the board were making about Mr. Trump were inaccurate. And the reason Don came to me is because I had an apartment there for investment. My parents had an apartment there. My in-laws lived there. Friends of mine, we all bought as a big block from a brokerage company. We got a good price on each unit. And we ultimately turned over the board, and I became actually the treasurer of the board because the out-of-control spending was going to put the building into bankruptcy. And I was proud to say that within a year, we had plus $1 million versus minus 1.3. the end of the day, Mr. Trump appreciated that, and he tasked me with something else. It was to handle a problem that Don Jr. had created in terms of a business, a license deal, and we resolved that. And then on top of that, the third time, Mr. Trump had asked me to take a look at the third Trump Entertainment Resort Chapter 11 reorganization, because he had a series of questions that he wanted answered. And I read these 2 stacked books, gave him the answers that he needed, and with that, the next time I was sitting in his office, and he asked me if I was happy at the sleepy old firm that I was with. I said yes. He said, would you rather work for me? And I asked if you offer me a job. And he said, yeah. And we negotiated, and I actually never went back to my office.
All right. But you suggested that the president sometimes communicates his wishes indirectly. For example, you said, quote, Mr. Trump did not directly tell me to lie to Congress. That's not how he operates, end quote. Can you explain how he does this?
Sure. It would be no different if I said, that's the nicest looking tie I've ever seen, isn't it? What are you going to do? You're going to fight with him? The answer is no. So you say, yeah, it's the nicest looking tie I've ever seen. That's how he speaks. He doesn't give you questions. He doesn't give you orders. He speaks in a code. And I understand the code because I've been around him for a decade.
And it's your impression that others who work for him understand the code as well?
Most people, yes.
Mr. Cohen, I don't know whether we should believe you today, but I'm going to ask you this one last question. What is the truth that you know President Trump fears most?
That's a tough question, sir. I don't have an answer for that one. What does he fear most?
What's the truth that he fears most? From your perspective. And again, I don't know whether we should believe you here today, but
you know, it's a tough question, sir. I don't know even how to answer that question.
Let me ask you this. What principles have you chosen to follow in your life? And do you wish to follow different principles now?
I've always tried to be a good person. I've tried to be a great friend. There were many, I think over 40 statements written in my support to the sentencing judge. I have friends who I treat incredibly well that I know for over 40 years, and I treat people after 40 minutes the same exact way. Am I perfect? No. Do I make mistakes? Yes. Have I made mistakes? Absolutely. I'm going to pay the consequences for it. But all I would like to do is be able to get my life back, to protect my wife and my children, support and grow old. That's pretty much where I'd like to be.
And you feel you're following a different set of principles now than you followed throughout your life?
I do, and I'm trying. I'm trying very hard. I thank you for your questions. Some of the other ones really make it difficult to try to, show some redemption. But I am trying. I am trying.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hill. Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to mention really quick a clarification on the truth and testimony form. The mention was around whether it talks about foreign entities at all. And the question is, in fact, whether witnesses have any contracts or payments originating with a foreign government. It does not cover all foreign entities, just foreign government entities. So, Mr. Cohen, what I'd like to ask you to do is review this issue over lunch with your attorneys. And if you need to amend your form, we ask that you do that before the conclusion of today's hearing. Also, I represent a purple district. I did not come here for partisan bickering. In fact, I actively wanted to avoid it. So when I ask these questions today, it is not as someone who has a vendetta against the president. It's as someone who comes from generations of service members who swore an oath to obey the orders of the President of the United States, and who, along with myself and every single other person up here, swore to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. My forefathers served their country, they served their commander-in-chief, and they served the idea that America is free and just, and that the law of the land rules us all especially those in the highest levels of our government. So I ask these questions to help determine whether our very own president committed felony crimes while serving in the Oval Office, including efforts to conceal payments that were intended to mislead the public and influence the outcome of an election. I hope to God that is not the case. So, Mr. Cohen, on January 22nd, 2018, just days after the Wall Street Journal broke the story that Mr. Cohen paid $130,000 to Stephanie Clifford to silence her during the 2016 presidential campaign, a nonprofit watchdog called Common Cause filed a complaint with the Department of Justice and FEC, alleging the payment to Ms. Clifford may have represented an illegal in-kind contribution to the Trump campaign. I ask that their complaint be entered into the record. On February 13th, 2018, Mr. Cohen, you sent a statement to the reporters that said, quote, I used my own personal funds to facilitate a payment of $130,000 to Ms. Stephanie Clifford, and neither the Trump organization nor the Trump campaign was party to the transaction with Ms. Clifford, and neither reimbursed me for the payment either directly or indirectly. Was the statement false?
The statement is not false. I purposefully left out Mr. Trump individually from that statement.
Okay. Why did you say it that way?
Because that's what was discussed to do between myself, Mr. Trump, and Alan Weisselberg.
So it was carefully worded?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Mr. Cohen, a reporter for the magazine Vanity Fair has reported that she interviewed you the very next day on February 14th, 2018, about the payment and reimbursement. And she wrote, quote, last February 14th, I interviewed Cohen in his office about the statement he gave the FEC in which he said Trump didn't know about the Stormy payment or reimburse him for it. Do you recall this meeting with the reporter?
I do.
The reporter also wrote, Trump called while I was there. I couldn't hear much, but he wanted to go over what the public messaging would be. Is that accurate?
It is.
Did the president call you while you were having a meeting with the reporter?
Yes.
Did the president call you to coordinate on public messaging about the payments to Ms. Clifford's in or around February 2018?
Yes.
What did the president ask or suggest that you say about the payments or reimbursements?
He was not knowledgeable of these reimbursements, and he wasn't knowledgeable of my actions.
He asked you to say that?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. In addition to the personal check for $35,000 in July 2017, is there additional corroborating evidence that Mr. Trump, while a sitting president of the United States, directly reimbursed you hush money as part of a criminal scheme to violate campaign finance laws?
There are 11 checks that I received for the year. The reason why 11, because, as I stated before, one had 2 checks.
And you have copies of all of those?
I can get copies. I'd have to go to the bank.
So we will be able to get copies of all 11 checks that Mr. Trump provided to you as part of this criminal scheme?
It's either from his personal account, as what was demonstrated in the exhibit, or it would come from the Donald J. Trump account, the trust account.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. I yield back the remainder of my time.
Mr. Gibbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I've just been sitting here. I'm new to the committee. I'm not an attorney. Sometimes, Mr. Chairman, your answers, you're either competent or are a liar. I think maybe I could be a better attorney. I don't know. I'm looking through this. You come in here and you rail on the President of the United States, Commander-in-Chief, while he's over across the Pacific Ocean trying to negotiate a deal to make this world safer. And, Mr. Chairman, just having this committee at this time when the Commander-in-Chief's out of the country is just I think, is a new president. But you call him a racist, a cheat, and you know, you're attacking his character. And I've been with the president a little bit, and I didn't see that in the president. I see a president who's very sincere. He's trying to make this country better for every American. And for you to come in here and do that, it's just a repentance on your part. It's really unbelievable. Real repentance would be go serve your time and don't come back here and make allegations towards a man that you can't substantiate. Now, I'm looking here from the remarks from the prosecutor of the Southern District of New York. False statements to Bank 3, which Cohen pleaded guilty, was far from an isolated event. It was one of the long series of self-serving lies Cohen told in numerous financial institutions. Earlier in your testimony, I think I heard you say that only there's a home equity loan, but apparently the prosecutors in New York think that there's other financial things that you did. He also, they said, managed to commit a series of crimes, all withholding himself out as a licensed attorney and upstanding member of the bar. Also, the Southern District prosecutor said that, wrote that your consciousness of wrongdoing is fleeting, that your remorse is minimal, and that your instinct is to blame others is strong. So I'm kind of left here. Why? You worked for the president for 10 years before he was president. If you have any sense of integrity that you're trying to tell us you have now, and it was that bad, why didn't you leave? You weren't stuck there because of financial reasons. You had ways to leave. You were an attorney. And so that's just kind of, you know, the president's working tirelessly, and you come and make these allegations, and you could have left any time you want. It looks like to me you're trying to save face. And with the other questions that came out here was, it looks like to me you're going to have a very lucrative deal at some point in your life, because you don't look like you're any close to retirement, but you're going to have some type of lucrative deal. And so one of my questions is, and it's come up a little bit, talks with you and your attorney, and there's been talks about members of Congress and staff, and you said there was some discussions. Was any of those discussions that you or your attorneys had with members of Congress or staff or prosecutors to get considerations to favor or other considerations to you or your family in the future?
No, the conversations were about the topics, and because there were things that originally we could not speak about at the request of whether it was the special counsel's office or the Southern District or any of the other agencies, including the House Select Intel or the Senate Select Intel. Sir, just for your personal edification here, I was asked to come here. Your chairman sent a letter to Mr. Davis, and I accepted, so I'm here voluntarily. And
I understand that.
Sir, and if you believe that I'm here...
I understand. I think it's a political theater.
Sir, if you believe it's not political theater for me, and I take no pleasure in saying anything negative about Mr. Trump. You've met him for a short period of time. I've been with him for over a decade. I've traveled with him internationally. I've spent dinners with him. It doesn't make me feel good about what's going on here. And as far as saving face, I'm not sure how being in front of the world, being called
well,
patchy,
this world today, with these lucrative book deals, movies that come about, I think you'll be pretty good in about 5 years. I yield the rest of my time to the chairman, ranking member.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Earlier you said you started the campaign?
That's correct, in 2011.
You started the campaign for President of the United States for Donald Trump?
I certainly did, sir.
Now that's news.
ShouldTrumpRun.com.
Wow.
2011. It was my idea. I saw a document in the newspaper that said, who'd you vote for in 2012? 6% of the people said Michael Cohen. 6% of the people turned around and said they'd vote for Donald Trump.
The reason Donald Trump is president is because
So I brought it into his office, and I said to him, Mr. Trump, take a look at this. And he goes, well, wouldn't that be great? And with that is where it all started.
Yeah. Okay. Like, I'm sure he had never thought of anything like that until you came.
No, I didn't say that.
Let me ask you one question. I got 8 seconds. I got 8 seconds. What did you talk to Mr. Schiff about?
I spoke to Mr. Schiff about topics that were going to be raised at the upcoming hearing.
Whoa. Not just what time to show up, actually what you're going to talk about?
The gentleman's time has expired.
Wow.
Mr. Sarbanes. Mr. Sarbanes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Cohen. I know the other side is suggesting that you are an incorrigible liar and that you're lying here today. I can't think of anything you have to gain at this point from lying. I mean, they talk about book deals and other things that you want to do, but I see a lot more that you could lose by telling the truth today, given the threats and other things that have been made against you and your family. So that's how I'm interpreting it. And, of course, you brought documents with you as well to bolster the credibility of your testimony. I did want to go back to an earlier line of questioning regarding the preparation of your testimony before you came before the Intelligence Committee. You've talked about a meeting at the White House where the testimony was being reviewed. I think you said that there was at least one White House attorney, Jay Sekulow, who was there, and you acknowledged that there were some edits that were made to your testimony. So on that topic, who at the White House reviewed your testimony?
I don't know the answer to that. The document was originally created by myself, along with my attorney at the time, from McDermott, Will, and Emery, and there was a joint defense agreement, so the document circulated around. I believe it was also reviewed by Abby Lowell, who represents Ivanka and Jared Kushner.
Why did you provide the testimony to the White House?
It was pursuant to the joint defense agreement that we were all operating under.
What were the edits that came back substantively on the testimony?
I'm sorry, I don't know, sir. I'd have to take a look at the document.
Did you have a reaction to why there might not have been, in a sense, a protest to what was going to be false testimony that was going to be provided?
No, sir, because the goal was to stay on message. It's just limit the relationship whatsoever with Russia. It was short. There's no Russian contacts. There's no Russian collusion. There's no Russian deals. That's the message. That's the same message that existed well before my need to come and testify.
So it's an example of where this idea, this mentality of you toe the line, whatever the storyline or the narrative of the day or the month or the year is going to be, you toe that line whether it results in false testimony or not.
I towed the party line, and I'm now suffering, and I'm going to continue to suffer for a while along with my family as a result of it, so yes.
Let me switch gears quickly before my time expires. And you may not have direct knowledge of some of these things, but you're offering us some very helpful perspective on how the Trump world operates. And frankly, another reason I find your testimony fairly compelling and credible is because a lot of the things you're describing, a lot of the behavior you're describing, is very consistent with what we all see every single day. So it's not a leap for us to arrive in the same place of perspective that you presented. I'm interested in some of the activities around the inaugural committee, the inauguration of the president. There was an article that appeared in ProPublica, it's a watchdog group, about some negotiation on pricing of things at the Trump hotel, where it looks like the rental that was being quoted was substantially, even double what you would expect to pay according to what the market should bear. And so in a sense, the Trump hotel was upcharging to the inaugural.
Even I couldn't afford to stay there.
Committee. Yeah. And so I'm just curious, do you have a sense of whether that kind of a practice is something that is consistent or inconsistent? Is it possible that that kind of upcharging could be done inside a Trump operation?
It did happen. And
Gentleman's time is
well,
expired.
what I can say to you is I wasn't part of the inaugural committee. I raised a lot of money for the inauguration, but I was not part of it, and there was a lot of things, and that issue is something that's also, obviously, we've read about in the paper, being investigated at the current moment.
Thank you.
Mr. Higgins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cohen, it's on my heart to tell you, sir, that I'm sorry for what your family's going through. I feel for your family. The word tells us clearly that a man's mouth is his destruction and his lips are the snare of his soul. And I see you, a man trapped in that. However, I must tell you that I've arrested several thousand men, and you remind me of many of them. The ones that immediately become humble and remorseful at the time they're actually booked. And while they're incarcerated, they're quite penitent, and then return to their former selves when they're back on the street. So respectful to your family and what they're going through, I owe you the honesty to tell you that that's my sense of you, good sir. I'm going to give you another opportunity to respond to what you brushed off earlier regarding your own statement during his testimony from C-SPAN notation at 2 hours and 50 seconds in. You stated regarding your credibility, that you're being accused of having no credibility, that it is exactly for that reason I spent the last week searching boxes to find the information that I did so that you don't have to take my word for it. I want you to look at the documents and make your own decisions. Now, the documents you're referring to, Mr. Cohen, are the documents that you submitted with your testimony today. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do you believe those documents to be worthy of evidence for this oversight hearing today?
I leave that to you to decide.
And I ask you again, sir, and please don't be incredulous, this is a serious question. Where are those boxes that contain documents worthy of evidence to be presented to Congress, and why have they not been turned over to investigating authorities looking into some of the many criminal activities that you're allegedly cooperating in? Where are these boxes? Who knows of the, where is this treasure of evidence?
The boxes that I'm referring to were boxes that were in my law office when the FBI entered and seized documents.
Mr. Chairman, I would hope that the investigating authorities have noted what the gentleman had just stated, and that actions be taken for those boxes to be seized and reviewed based upon proper warrants signed by a sitting judge. You noted earlier today, Mr. Cohen, quite incredulously, one of my colleagues asked you regarding the television deal. You expressed wonderment that your predicament could possibly get you on television. It certainly got you on television today, has it not, sir?
Sir, I was on television representing Mr. Trump going back into 2011.
Well, I didn't know who you were until today, really, until the FBI raided your home. Most of Americans didn't know who you were. How many attorneys do you think Mr. Trump has had through the course of his career? Quite a few, I would imagine. You're just one that's in a trap right now. And I understand you're trying to get out of it. You're in a bind. But I ask you, good sir, have you discussed film and book deals with your stated current attorney, Mr. Davis, Lanny Davis?
With Mr. Davis?
Yes.
No. But I have been approached by many people who are looking to do book deals, movie deals, and so on. So
Yes,
the answer
you're
to
right
that
as
is
an
yes.
American, but it leads me back to my instinct that compares you to many of the men that I've arrested during the course of my career. Mr. Chairman,
with all due respect, sir,
that our primary hearing to introduce the Oversight Committee, the 116th Congress of the American people, has manifested in the way that it obviously is. This is an attempt to injure our president and lay some sort of soft cornerstone for future impeachment proceedings. This is the full intent of the majority. I yield my remaining 30 seconds to the ranking member.
Mr. Cohen, earlier you said the United States Southern District of New York is not accurate in that statement.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Earlier you said that the United States Southern District of New York Attorney's Office, that statement is not accurate. You said it's not a lie, you said it's not accurate. You stand by that?
Yes, I did not want a role in the new administration.
So the court's wrong?
Sir, can I finish,
Sure.
please? I got exactly the role that I wanted. There is no shame in being personal attorney to the president. I got exactly what I wanted. I asked Mr. Trump for that job, and he gave it to me.
All I'm asking, if I could, and I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman, you're saying that statement from the Southern District of New York attorneys is wrong.
I'm saying I didn't write it, and it's not accurate.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Welch.
Thank you. One of the most significant events in the last presidential campaign, of course, was the dump of emails stolen from the Democratic National Committee, dumped by WikiLeaks. Mr. Cohen, during your opening statement, which was at the height of the election, you testified you were actually meeting with Donald Trump in July 2016 when Roger Stone happened to call and tell Mr. Trump that he had just spoken to Julian Assange. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. And you said that Mr. Assange told Mr. Trump about an upcoming, quoting your opening statement, quote, massive dump of emails that would damage Hillary Clinton's campaign. So I want to ask you about Roger Stone's phone call to the president. First of all, was that on speakerphone? Is that what you indicated?
Yes. So Mr. Trump has a black speakerphone that sits on his desk. He uses it quite often because with all the number of phone calls he gets.
Now, in January of this year, 2019, the New York Times asked President Trump if he ever spoke to Roger Stone about these stolen emails, and President Trump answered, and I quote, "No, I didn't. I never did." Was that statement by President Trump true?
No, it's not accurate.
And can you please describe for us, to the best of your recollection, you were present, exactly what Mr. Stone said to Mr. Trump?
It was a short conversation, and he said, Mr. Trump, I just want to let you know that I just got off the phone with Julian Assange, and in a couple of days, there's going to be a massive dump of emails that's going to severely hurt the Clinton campaign.
And was Mr. Trump and Mr. Stone aware of where those emails came from?
That I'm not aware of.
Did Mr. Trump ever suggest then or later to call the FBI to report this breach?
He never expressed that to me.
Did the president at that time or ever since, in your knowledge, indicate an awareness that this conduct was wrong?
No.
The reason I ask is because on July 22nd, on the eve of the Democratic Convention, WikiLeaks published, as you know, the 20,000 leaked internal DNC emails. Could your meeting with Mr. Trump have been before that date?
Yes.
So Mr. Trump was aware of the upcoming dump before it actually happened?
Yes.
Right. And is there any record?
Though, sir, I don't know whether he knew or not, and I don't believe he did, what the substance of the dump was going to be, only that there was going to be a dump of emails.
And he was aware of that before the dump occurred, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And are there any records that would corroborate the day of this meeting, calendars perhaps?
I'm not in possession, but I believe, again, this is part of the special counsel, and they probably best suited to corroborate that information.
Was anyone else present in the room during the call?
I don't recall for this one, no, sir.
Is there anyone else the committee should talk to about the president's knowledge of the WikiLeaks email dump?
Well, again, when he called, Ronograph yelled out to Mr. Trump, Rogers on line 1, which was regular practice.
And that's his assistant?
That's his, yes.
All right. And during a news conference on July 27th, 2016, then candidate Trump publicly appealed to Russia to hack Hillary Clinton's emails and make them public. He stated, and I quote, "Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing." Now, going back to Mr. Stone's phone call to the president, do you recall if Mr. Trump had knowledge of the WikiLeaks dump at the time of his direct appeal to Russia?
I am not.
But the call with Mr. Stone, you believe, was before
Yes.
this 27th?
Yes, I'm sorry. If you're, I thought you were talking about a different set of documents that got dumped. So I was in Mr. Trump's office, it was either July 18th or 19th, and yes, he went ahead. I don't know if the 35,000 or 30,000 emails was what he was referring to, but he certainly had knowledge.
All right, thank you. Just
Yes,
one
sir.
last question. Mr. Raskin had been asking you some questions, and one of the things in your answer was that Mr. Pecker expended other monies to protect Mr. Trump. Can you elaborate on what some of those other activities were?
Sure. There was the story about Mr. Trump having a love child with an employee, and actually the husband of that employee works for the company as well. And there was a elevator operator who claims that he overheard the conversation taking place between one of Mr. Trump's other executives and somebody, and he ended up paying like $15,000 in order to buy that story to find out whether it was true or not. And that's just one example of things that David had done over the years. It was the reason why in the recording, when David was looking to become the CEO of Time magazine, we were concerned about, we'll call it the treasure trove of documents that had been created over the years, that if he left, somebody could open up the key to a drawer and find all this information. So we were going to look to buy all of those life rights and so on.
Gentleman's time expired. Mr. Norman.
Mr. Cohen, thank you for testifying. I join Congressman Higgins in feeling for your family. They have no part in this. You know, I've heard all the testimony, and I'm trying to decide what Clay's trying to decide. Are you really sorry for what you did, or you just got caught? And the thing that amazed me is that in your opening statement, which, let me quote, last fall, I pled guilty in federal court to felonies for the benefit of, at the direction of, and in coordination with individual one. Was that President?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Your crimes were of your own to benefit yourself.
Some of them, yes.
No, go through all the ones with the real estate, with the banks. On your HELOC loan, you failed to disclose more than $20 million in debt. You failed to disclose $70,000 in monthly payments. On your $14 million line of credit, you failed to disclose that you had drawn on that. So this was all for yourself. This wasn't for the benefit of President Trump. This was to benefit Michael Cohen. So that's my question. Did you just get caught? And you worked for this man for 10 years, Mr. Cohen. You came in here with these, he's a con man. He's a cheat. This is the very man that, didn't you wiretap him illegally? Did you not wiretap President Trump without his knowledge?
I did record Mr. Trump in a conversation, yes.
Is that lawyer-client privilege? Is that something that an honest guy would do, an honest lawyer?
I actually never thought that this was going to be happening and that recording even existed. I had forgotten.
But you did it.
Yes, I did.
Have you ever...
I had a reason for doing it.
What was your reason?
Because I knew he wasn't going to pay that money, and David Pecker had already chewed me out on multiple occasions regarding other monies that he expended.
But this is a man that you trusted, you take a bullet for, you secretly recorded. Let me ask you this, Mr. Cohen. Have you legally or illegally recorded other clients?
I have recordings of people, yes.
Legally or illegally?
I believe that they're legal.
Did you tell them?
In New York State, you don't have to do that.
So you didn't tell them?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Sometimes I also use the recordings for contemporaneous note-taking instead of writing it down. I find it easier.
If the shoe were reversed, would you like your trusted lawyer recording you?
I probably would not, no.
No, sir. It's untrustworthy. It's something people just would not do. Now, your bank loans that I just ran down, did you ever default on any of these loans?
No, sir.
So the bank didn't take any loss?
No bank has. I am not in default. I've never filed a bankruptcy. The HELOC you're referring to, I replaced that from a different HELOC, paid it off. I owe no banks any money.
How about your medallion taxi cab? Did you have to sell that?
Well, the ones in Chicago, yes, I do have to sell. However, New York, the answer is no, I don't. And the industry is going through a major would because of ride sharing. It's changed a lot of things.
The value of it has?
Yes, sir.
Right. So no bank, would the banks make you a loan again based on your record?
Actually, they did. They did. The bank actually redid and they refinanced the entire package.
Currently?
Post this, yes.
Okay. Have they never had to do a loan loss reserve for the projected losses?
I don't know what they did, but it's still the same amount. I didn't get the benefit of it, no, sir.
Most likely they did. I was on an audit committee.
They may have done that, sir, but that's for their own banking, not for
No,
me.
it's by law.
My
They
note.
have to, if they suspect you of lying, which you admitted to, if they suspect you of maybe not being able to make a loan payment, they have to have a loan loss reserve that's 125% of what you. If it's $20 million, they have to post in their account $20 million plus. So they get no interest on it. And you know who pays for that? The American public who deals with that bank.
Yes, but sir, I'm not in default, and I'm current on each and every one of those medallion loans. And I've never owed any money to First Republic Bank. In fact, at the time that I had the HELOC, I had more cash sitting in that same bank than,
Last question.
than the HELOC and my mortgage combined.
Have you ever been to Prague?
I've never been to Prague.
Never have.
I've never been to the Czech Republic.
Yield my balance my time.
Ms. Spear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Cohen. On page 5 of your statement, you say, and I quote, "You need to know that Mr. Trump's personal lawyers reviewed and edited my statement to Congress about the timing of the Moscow Tower negotiations." Who were those attorneys?
Jay Sekulow from the White House?
Yes.
Jay Sekulow, I believe Abby Lowell as well.
And you have a copy of your original statement that you can provide to the committee?
I can try to get that for you.
All right, if you would do that. The letter of intent for the Moscow Tower was in the fall of 2015, correct?
Correct.
Was there an expiration date on that letter of intent?
There was no expiration
So
date.
it could technically still be in effect today?
Oh, no, it's been terminated.
It has been terminated?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did Mr. Trump tell you to offer Vladimir Putin a free penthouse?
No, ma'am.
So where
that
does
was
that come
that was
from?
Felix Sater. It was a marketing stunt that he spoke about.
So Felix Sater had suggested to you that Mr. Trump offer a penthouse to Mr. Putin?
Yes, because it would certainly drive up the price per square foot. No different than in any condo where they start listing celebrities that live in the property.
In 2016, did you travel to Europe?
Yes,
Did you meet with persons associated with the Moscow Tower project?
no.
It was for personal? Or?
Personal. My daughter was studying at Queen Mary in London.
So you did not meet with any Russians?
No.
There is an elevator tape that has been referenced as a catch and kill product. It was evidently of Mr. Trump and a woman, presumably Mrs. Trump, is that correct?
Are we talking about in Moscow or the Trump Tower elevator tape?
There's an elevator tape that went up for auction, ostensibly in 2016, is
Yes,
that correct?
I've heard about this.
And who is on that tape?
It's Mr. Trump with Melania.
And what happened in that tape?
The story goes that he struck Melania while in that elevator because there's a camera inside, which I'm not so sure. Actually, I'm certain it's not true. I've heard about that tape for years. I've known 4 or 5 different people, including folks from AMI, who have
But there was some tape that went up for auction, correct?
I don't believe that auction was real, and I don't believe Mr. Trump ever struck Mrs. Trump, ever. I don't believe it.
And are you aware of anyone purchasing that tape then?
I don't believe it was ever
So you never
purchased.
saw this tape?
No, ma'am, and I know several people who went to go try to purchase it for catch and kill purpose. It doesn't exist.
Right.
Mr. Trump would never, in my opinion, that's not something that he
Good
is
to
not.
know. Is there a love child?
There is not, to the best of my knowledge.
So you would pay off someone to not
It wasn't me, ma'am.
report-
It was AMI. It was David Pecker.
So he paid off someone about a love child that doesn't exist.
Correct. It was about $15,000.
Okay. How many times did Mr. Trump ask you to threaten an individual or entity on his behalf?
Quite a few times.
50 times?
More.
100 times?
More.
200 times?
More.
500 times?
Probably. Over the 10 years.
Over the 10 years, he asked you.
And when you say threaten, I'm talking with litigation or an argument with
Intimidation.
a nasty reporter that is writing an article.
What do you know about let's go to your tapes. You said there's probably 100 tapes,
Voice recordings,
voice recordings. And will you make them available to the committee?
if you would really like them.
Did Mr. Trump tape
Don't you have to gavel that, sir?
We would.
Sorry.
Mr. Trump, did Mr. Trump tape any conversations?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Were you involved in the $25 million settlement to Trump University?
I had a role in that, yes.
Who paid the settlement?
I believe it was Mr. Trump. I don't know the answer to that.
You don't know the answer, but you were involved in the
Yes, in a different aspect.
There's some reference to a businessman in Kansas being involved in that. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with that, no.
All right. Finally, in my 13 seconds left, what do you want your children to know?
That I'm sorry for everything, and I'm sorry for the pain that I've caused them. And I wish I can go back in time.
Thank you. I yield back.
Young lady's time has expired. To the members of the committee, before we go to Ms. Miller, so that you can properly plan. There's a vote apparently coming up in about 10 to 20 minutes. And what we will do is we will recess, and we will come back, listen up, 30 minutes after the last vote begins. Got that? Not it ends. 30 minutes after it begins, and we'll do that promptly. All right? All right, Ms. Miller.
I am very disappointed to have you in front of this committee today. Quite frankly, this isn't the reason the people of West Virginia sent me to Congress. I find this hearing not in the best interest of the American people. This is another political game with the sole purpose of discrediting the president. If it was not already obvious, there are members here with a singular goal in Congress: to impeach President Trump. To achieve this goal, they will waste not only precious taxpayer dollars, but also time in this committee and Congress as a whole. In fact, they will go so far as to bring a convicted felon in front of our committee. We are supposed to take what you say, Mr. Cohen, at this time about President Trump as the truth. But you're about to go to prison for lying. How can we believe anything you say? The answer is we can't. This begs the question, why are those in the majority holding this hearing? I am appalled. We could be focused on actual issues that are facing America, like border security, neonatal abstinence syndrome, or improving our nation's crumbling infrastructure. Instead, the Democrats are trying to grasp at straws. Let's talk about this witness. From his sentencing hearing in the Southern District of New York, Judge Pauley stated, Mr. Cohen pled guilty to a veritable smorgasbord of fraudulent conduct, willful tax evasion, making false statements to a financial institution, illegal campaign contributions, and making false statements to Congress. Each of the crimes involved deception, and each appears to have been motivated by personal greed and ambition. This is who we have in front of us today in our committee, someone who is about to be sent to prison for 3 years for evading his taxes, deceiving a financial institution, lying to Congress, among other counts. One of the most appalling facts about this hearing is that Mr. Cohen has used his experiences with President Trump both before and after he was elected for his own greed and profit. I'd like some yes or no answers. Isn't it true you tried to sell a book about your time with President Trump entitled Trump Revolution: From the Tower to the White House, Understanding Donald J. Trump?
Yes, that happened early on when I was still even part, I believe, of the RNC.
And this book deal, which you had with Hatchet Books, was worth around $500,000. Isn't that correct?
No more, ma'am.
How much more?
I think it was about $750.
Wow. Mr. Cohen.
I did turn it down.
Given that you continue to profit from publicly discussing your time with Mr. Trump, I worry that this committee hearing the majority has given you will only serve as a platform for you to continue to lie and sensationalize and exaggerate wherever it suits you. Do you plan to pursue another book deal about your experiences?
Yes.
I would presume this book would be a little different than your latest pitch, but your new angle might please some new fans. Anything to sell books. Mr. Chairman, we've canceled hearings on child separation and on other issues that are close to my heart for this media circus. What a waste of time and money for a man who has gladly exploited the name of the president to promote his own name and fill his own pockets. It pains me that we are sitting here adding another chapter to his book. Thank you, and I yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Jordan.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding. Earlier, Mr. Cohen, the gentlelady from California talked about this this tape.
I'm sorry, sir, I can't hear you.
Earlier, the gentlelady from California talked about this tape, this elevator tape that you said does not exist.
That's correct. I do not believe it exists.
But is it also your testimony that the Trump team was willing to pay to make sure a story about a non-existent tape never became public?
No, sir, that's not what I said.
They were willing to stop a false tape?
We learned that this tape was potentially on the market and that it existed. And so what we did is exactly what we did with all the other catch and kill. We looked for it. And if in fact that it did exist, we would have tried to stop it. That's what I would have done.
False tape.
But it's a false tape. I've never heard it, and I can assure you one thing about Mr. Trump. Many things, he would never, ever do something like that. I don't see it.
Ms. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Cohen, I'd like to ask you more about the details of the $130,000 payment you made to Stephanie Clifford, the adult film actress known as Stormy Daniels, in order to purchase her silence shortly before the 2016 elections. First, according to documents filed by federal prosecutors in New York, you created a shell company called Essential Consultants, LLC. Is that correct?
It's correct.
And you created this company for the purpose of making the payment to Ms. Clifford. Is that correct?
Amongst other things, yes.
You then used a home equity line of credit to fund the account in the name of Essential Consultants, LLC. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You then wired $130,000 to the attorney representing Ms. Clifford at that time and wrote in the memo field for the wire the word, quote, retainer. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can you tell us why you decided to use this complicated process to make this payment?
Well, starting an LLC is not a sophisticated means. LLC, you call up a company, you pay for it, and they open it for you. And the reason that I used the home equity line of credit as opposed to cash that I had in the same exact bank was I didn't want my wife to know about it because she handles all of the banking. And I didn't want her coming to me and asking me what was the $130,000 for. And then I was going to be able to move money from one account to the other and to pay it off because I didn't want to have to explain to her what that payment was about. I sent it to the IOLA account, the interest on a lawyer's account, to Keith Davidson, California, Ms. Daniels' attorney. He would hold it in escrow until such time as I received the executed NDA, non-disclosure agreement.
Did Mr. Trump know you were going through this process to hide the payment?
Yes.
Why not just use Mr. Trump's personal or company bank account to make the payment? Why was the distraction so important besides you not wanting your wife to know?
What his concern was that there would be a check that has his very distinct signature onto it. And even after she cashed the check, all you need to do is make a photocopy of it, and it's kind of proof positive on exactly what took place. So here the goal was to keep him far away from it as possible.
Can anyone corroborate what you have shared with us?
Absolutely.
And that is?
Keith Davidson, Alan Weisselberg, President Trump.
Okay. Now let's talk about the reimbursement. According to federal prosecutors, and I quote, after the election, Cohen sought reimbursement for election-related expenses, including the $130,000 payment, prosecutors stated that you, and I quote, presented an executive of the company with a copy of a bank statement reflecting the $130,000 wire transfer. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Do you still have a copy of that bank statement?
Yes, it's actually made part of the exhibit.
Okay, so you will provide it to the committee?
Yes, ma'am.
According to federal prosecutors, executives at the company then, and I quote, agreed to reimburse Cohen by adding $130,000 and $50,000, grossing up that amount to $360,000 for tax purposes, and adding a $60,000 bonus such that Cohen would be paid $420,000 in total. Executives of the company decided to pay the $420,000 in monthly installments of $35,000 over the course of a year. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
What was the purpose of grossing up the amounts, essentially doubling what you had paid to Ms. Clifford and others?
Because if you pay $130,000 and you live in New York where you have a 50% tax bracket, in order to get your $130 back, you have to have $260. Otherwise, if he gave me back $130, then I'd be out $65,000.
What was the purpose of spreading the reimbursements to you over the 12 monthly installments?
That was in order to hide what the payment was. I obviously wanted the money in one shot. I would have preferred it that way. But in order to be able to put it onto the books, Alan Weisselberg made the decision that it should be paid over the 12 months so that it would look like a retainer.
And did Mr. Trump know about this reimbursement method?
Oh, he knew about everything, yes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Cohen. So the president not only knew about the payments, he knew and helped to hide the payments and the reimbursements to you.
Yeah, we discussed it. Everything had to go through Mr. Trump, and it had to be approved by Mr. Trump.
And now you're going to prison, and he's...
And I am going to prison, yes, ma'am.
I yield back.
Donald Trump.
If I
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Earlier, you
Yes, I yield my time. Oh, gee.
Earlier you'd said, I'm assuming New York's a one-party consent state. One person can record the other one without it being illegal.
Correct.
But you also were a member of the New York Bar?
I was, yes.
How would you rate recording clients in the ethical realm of being a lawyer?
I know it's not illegal, and
I'm not asking if it's illegal. I'm asking if it's ethical.
I don't know. That we'd have to leave the judgment of the Bar Association.
So, well, I think every other lawyer in here knows exactly where it is in the ethical standard. When you said you had 100 tapes, were any of those tapes of other clients?
Yes.
And I think this is pretty amazing. I really do. Did any of them waive privilege?
Nope.
So 5 minutes ago, in the middle of our hearing on oversight, you just immediately responded that you would hand over tapes to this committee without any of your previous clients waiving privilege.
I'm not the only one in possession of those documents. Those documents are in the hands of all of the
Whoever else is in
agencies
charge
already.
of those documents is not my concern. My concern is I know lawyers that would go to jail before they would violate attorney-client privilege. And in a matter of a second, you just said, absolutely, I will turn those over.
Just trying to cooperate, sir.
At the expense of clients who have never waived privilege.
They're already in the hands, sir, of all of the agencies. I didn't ask people.
What law enforcement determines to do with something and what you determine to do with something, client privilege and attorney trust accounts are about the two most sacred things that you can ever do in your entire career as a lawyer. And
by the
in
way, sir,
a matter of a second.
And the tape with Mr. Trump,
completely
the reason that it's out there is because Rudy Giuliani waived the privilege.
I'm not talking about Rudy Giuliani. I'm talking about you. And I don't know who's on those tapes. Only you know who is on those tapes. There's 100 of them.
The other one is also subject to an ongoing.
My point is, within a matter of a second, 1 second, you took absolutely no calculation of your role as those clients' counselor, the role that plays in privacy, and the role that plays in a solemn vow you took when you passed the bar, when you signed on to the bar, until recently were a member of the bar. And you just immediately said, if it helps me out in the today in front of TV, yes, absolutely, Mr. Chairman, you can have that. And I think, and that just goes into what we're going to talk about next briefly. We talk about these indictments on tax fraud and bank fraud as if they are isolated incidents. But they're not isolated incidents of bad judgment. These were intricate, elaborate lies that needed to be held with constant just constant deceptions of banks, businesses, associates, accountants, potentially your family. You received over $2.4 million in personal loans from taxi medallion company 1. And those were loan payments for a business loan, correct?
No, sir.
You weren't receiving
those.
Okay, go ahead.
Those were payments that were made by the management company that was operating the medallions.
To you?
To me.
So, and those were deposited into your personal account, or in some instances, your wife's account?
It was deposited into the joint checking account of my wife and I that's located at the base of the building that we reside in.
And were those disclosed on your tax returns?
They are not. They were not disclosed on my tax return.
And in fact, when your accountant talked to you about those deposits, you told them you wouldn't pay for a memo that you didn't ask to be done?
That's inaccurate.
So the
that's
sentencing court in New York has it wrong?
Okay. I don't know what Mr. Getzel wrote, my accountant. There are a series of issues regarding his memo anyway, including the fact he's almost directing me in an earlier memo to commit fraud. But putting all that aside with Jeff Getzel, the answer to that is I pled guilty, all right? And I made my mistake, and I'm going, as I've said 100 times now, right? I'm not so sure why the singular attack on my taxes. If you want to look at them, I'm more than happy to show them to you.
If the chairman will give me 20 minutes, I got plenty of other things to talk about.
Every single word that's written
all right, I'm going to reclaim my time.
Is not 100% accurate.
Okay? Well, I'm done.
And that's exactly why when it comes to the credibility, why I asked Mr. Davis, Mr. Monaco, to please, let's figure out how.
But that's my point with the credibility.
So that you understand.
These aren't isolated. These are not isolated incidents of attack. These were constant deceptions. Whether it's rolling over a $20 million line of credit to a $14 million credit, you went through great lengths to conceal that from one bank, while at the same time you are reducing your net income to another bank. These aren't things that happened on January 1 of 18, January 1 of 17, January 1 of 15. These are things that were constantly involved on a. My question is, was it exhausting keeping track of all the lies that you were telling all these people?
The gentleman's time has expired. You may.
I don't have an answer for him.
Very well,
thank you for continuing the narrative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cohen, good luck on your road to redemption.
Thank you. It's going to be a long way.
The opposite of that is perdition, as I remember, and that's particularly hard on your children. So I wish you well, and I wish your family well. Mr. Cohen, as you sort of describe your road to here, Mr. Cooper asked you when the moment was, or moments when you decided you needed to change. It strikes me there is a transition that you have illuminated here. Your period of time, the 10 years working for somebody who you admired as a developer, and then when Charlottesville happened, and quite frankly, when the special counsel called you in, obviously was a key part of it, or you wouldn't be here. But the in-between part I find really interesting and troubling, at least in terms of appearances and confidence that the American people would have in this institution and democracy, quite frankly. So during that period of time, I want to ask you about two specific, if we have enough time. First, the Trump Tower. So you were negotiating for this. As you said, it was to be the tallest building in Europe. In your guilty plea with the special counsel, you quote, say, it quotes, Cohen asked individual one, is that President Trump?
Yes.
Okay. About the possibility of President Trump traveling to Russia in connection with the Moscow project, and asked a senior campaign official about potential business travel to Russia. When did this conversation happen? Do you recall?
Early on in the campaign.
And who was the campaign official?
Corey Lewandowski.
What did you discuss in this meeting?
Possibility of which dates that Mr. Trump would have availability if, in fact, that we were going to go over to Russia to take a look at the project. I'm sorry, sir?
So go ahead.
Unfortunately, it never came to fruition because we were never successful in getting the first prong of what I needed, which was ownership or control over a piece of property. And until such time, there was no reason to come up with a date. But when I first received the information request to go to Russia, what I decided to do is I spoke to Mr. Trump about it. He told me to speak to Corey and see what dates might be available if I got the information I needed.
So it stopped because of appearances, or did it stop because the parties decided not to pursue it?
I'm so sorry, I don't understand your question.
So why did the pursuit of the Trump Tower that Mr. Trump has now said, of course he pursued it because he thought he might be going back into the development business, why was the reason that the deal stopped?
Because he won the presidency.
Okay. So in that interim period of time, you must admit it looks troubling that now that we know what foreign influence was attempting to do, whether there was collusion or not, it certainly appears troubling that Mr. Trump was part of this negotiation, and at the same time what we know, perhaps separately, that the Russians were engaged in our election.
Well, I don't know about them being engaged in the election. I can only talk for myself. Here I would say to Mr. Trump, in response to his question, what's going on with Russia, I'm still waiting for documents, and then that night at a rally, he would turn around and do his battle cry of no Russia, no collusion, no involvement, witch hunt.
Okay, on a separate subject, but somewhat related, on January 17 of this year, the Wall Street Journal published a story stating that you hired John Gager, the owner of a consulting company who works for Liberty University in Virginia, to rig at least 2 online polls related to Donald Trump. Did you hire him?
Those were back in, I believe, 2015?
2014.
2014.
2014. So you did hire him?
Yes, I spoke with Mr. Gauger about manipulating these online polls.
And did he use bots to manipulate the poll?
He used algorithms, and if that includes bots, then the answer is yes.
Yes, that's accurate. Did the president have any involvement?
Yes.
In directing you to do this?
Yes.
What were the results of the poll?
Exactly where we wanted them to be. In the CNBC poll, we came in at number 9, and the Drudge Report, he was top of the Drudge Report as well.
Okay.
Poll.
And
please understand also, the CNBC poll was called the Contenders, and it was the top 250 people that they named, and it was supposed to be the top 10 most influential people.
Let me just finish with, earlier today, you directed a comment to my colleagues, and I'm quoting, so correct me if I got this wrong. You said the more people who follow Mr. Trump, the more people will be where I am. Is it your expectation that people in the administration will end up where you are?
Sadly, if they follow blindly like I have, I think the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Time has expired. Mr. Stubbe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I ran for Congress, I talked about how Washington was broken. But I certainly did not expect the level of political gamemanship, partisanship, and sheer stagnation of policies that would improve the lives of Americans that I'm witnessing today. It is terribly disappointing to me that this committee and its chairman chose to spend our time in questioning an individual that has zero probative value and zero credibility, instead of spending our limited time focusing on improving the lives of Americans, creating jobs, or streamlining the functioning of our federal government. Yet here we are, taking testimony from a convicted liar, and not someone who has just lied to his clients or family or friends, but testimony from an individual who deliberately and premeditatedly lied to this body. He lied to Congress through false statements and written statements. He lied to Congress through his testimony. He then amplified his false statements by releasing and repeating his lies to the public, including the other potential witnesses. Yet now, we on this committee and the American people are expected to believe Mr. Cohen's testimony. I don't know a juror in America that would believe anything Mr. Cohen says given his past actions and lies. Mr. Cohen, you stood before multiple congressional committees before today and raised your right hand and swore an oath to be honest. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you lied to those congressional committees. Is that correct?
Previously?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
You stated that Trump never directed you to lie to Congress. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Therefore, you lied to Congress on your own accord and then admitted to lying to Congress. Correct?
I've already stated my piece on that. I knew what he wanted me to do. I was staying on party line.
But he never directed you to lie to Congress?
He did not use those words, no.
In your evidence that you provided this committee a mere 2 hours before the hearing started, were payments made to you by Mr. Trump, correct?
Amongst other things, yes.
Yet other than your testimony here today, there is absolutely no proof that those specific payments were for those specific purposes. Is that correct?
It's my testimony that the check that I produced as part of this testimony, the $35,000, and then the second check that's signed by Alan Weisselberg and Don Trump Jr., were 2 checks out of the 11 that were meant for the reimbursement of the hush money payment to Stormy Daniels.
So in your testimony on page 13, you claim, and I quote, Mr. Trump directed me to use my own personal funds from a home equity line of credit to avoid any money being tracked back to him that could negatively impact his campaign. Do you have any proof of this direction?
Just the payment, sir.
So no email?
Mr. Trump doesn't have email.
So no recording?
I do not have recordings, no.
No text message?
Mr. Trump doesn't text message.
So no direction other than your testimony today that that's what the payment was for?
And the fact that I paid on his behalf, at his direction, the money to Keith Davidson's IOLA account. You're right, there's no other documentation I have.
So nothing that you produced as part of your exhibits prove that President Trump directed you in any way to make that payment?
I don't even know how to answer that, sir.
Well, it's pretty simple. There's nothing in the evidence that shows, or the exhibits that you provided today, that show that Trump directed you to make those payments.
Other than the non-disclosure agreement that has been seized by government authorities and is widely shown, I don't believe there's anybody out there that believes that I just decided to pay $130,000 on his behalf.
Well, you were his attorney for over 10 years.
That doesn't mean that I pay $130,000.
Well, it doesn't also mean that he wasn't paying you for representation of counsel.
Okay.
So how did President Trump even know you had a HELOC?
I'm so sorry, sir?
How did President Trump even know you had a HELOC?
Because we discussed it. Because I told him the same thing, that I didn't want my wife to find out about it. And as one additional, Rudy Giuliani himself came out and expressed that Mr. Trump reimbursed me for the money that was spent to pay Stormy Daniels.
And did you tell Chris Como that you had no access to Mr. Trump during October and November of 2016?
I'm sorry, I don't know what you're referring to.
Your interview with Chris Como.
I would need to see the document.
Did you also tell Chris Como that you made these payments without telling Mr. Trump because you wanted to protect Mr. Trump?
And I was protecting Mr. Trump.
And you told him that you made these payments without telling him?
When I said that, if that's what I said to Chris Cuomo, yes, that was my line.
And if this unsupported claim was true, then it would be part of an ongoing investigation as evidence of a crime, and the Department of Justice would not let you discuss it during your testimony here today. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Gentleman's time has expired. Did you answer?
Yes, I did want to say one last thing. Not only did I lie to the American people, I lied to the First Lady. When the President called me and I was sitting in a car with a friend of mine, and he had me speak to her and explain to the First Lady. So the answer is you're not accurate, and I don't feel good about any of this, and this was not my intention.
Ms. Lawrence.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to put on the record, as being a Black American and having endured the public comments of racism from the sitting president, as being a Black person, I can only imagine what's being said in private. And to prop up one member of our entire race of Black people and say that that nullifies that is totally insulting. And in this environment of expecting a president to be inclusive and to look at his administration speaks volume. So I have some questions. I want to talk to you about this intimidation of witness. Mr. Cohen, you were initially scheduled to testify before the House Oversight Committee on February the 7th, but your legal team delayed your testimony, quoting, ongoing threats against your family from the president and Attorney Giuliani. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then on November 29th, after you admitted that the president's negotiations over a real estate project in Russia continue well through the summer before the 2016 election, President Trump called you, quote, a weak person, and accused you of lying. And then on December 16th, 2018, after you disclosed that it was the president who directed you to arrange hush money payments to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal to conceal his extramarital affairs, he called you, the President of the United States, a rat. Mr. Cohen, why do you feel or believe that the President is repeatedly attacking you? You are stating that you feel intimidated, asking us to protect you, following your cooperation with the law enforcement.
When you have access to 60+ million people that follow you on social media, and you have the ability within which to spark some action by individuals that follow him, and from his own words that he can walk down Fifth Avenue, shoot someone, and get away with it. It's never comfortable when the President of the United States...
What do you think he can do to you?
A lot. And it's not just him. It's those people that follow him in his rhetoric.
What is a lot?
I don't know. I don't walk with my wife if we go to a restaurant or we go somewhere. I don't walk with my children. I make them go before me because I have fear. And it's the same fear that I had before when he initially decided to drop that tweet in my cell phone. I receive some, and I'm sure you'll understand, I receive some tweets, I receive some Facebook Messenger, all sorts of social media attacks upon me, whether it's the private direct message that I've had to turn over to the Secret Service because they are the most vile, disgusting statements that anyone can never receive. And when it starts to affect your children, that's when it really affects you.
On January 20th, 2019, Mr. Giuliani called your father-in-law, quote, a criminal, and said that he may have ties to organized crime. Mr. Cohen, do you believe that the President, Mr. Giuliani, publicly targeted your father-in-law as an effort to intimidate you? Can you elaborate? Why is your father-in-law being pulled into this?
I don't know the answer to that. My father-in-law was in the clothing business, came to this country because in the 1972-73, the expulsion of Jews from the Ukraine. He came here to this country. He worked hard, and he's now enjoying his retirement. Never in my life did I think that Mr. Trump would do something so disgraceful. And he's attacking him because he knows I care about my family. And to hurt me, he's trying to hurt them. Interestingly enough, my father-in-law's biggest investments happen to be in a Trump property. So it just doesn't make any sense to me.
I want to be clear. Any efforts to prevent a witness from testifying in front of Congress is against the law. I want to be real clear about that. And as the chairman has said, retaliating against witnesses and threatening their families and members is a textbook mob tactic that does not benefit the President of the United States or this country. And I want to be on the record, this hearing is not about discrediting the President. It's about the oath of office that we take as members of Congress to have checks and balances and to meet the laws and the policies of this country to serve. Thank you, and I yield back.
Mr. Roy.
Mr. Cohen, I too want to offer my heartfelt thoughts for your family and what they're going through. I know it's tough, and for your time here today, I know it's tough for you to stand here in front of this committee. The chairman suggested you volunteered to come here. You testified that you were asked to come here. Is it correct you were asked to come here, yes or no?
Yes.
The combined total of the crimes for which you were sentenced would bring a maximum of 70 years, yes or no?
Yes.
Yet you are going to prison for 3 years, yes or no?
Yes.
The prosecutors of the Southern District of New York say to secure loans, Cohen falsely understated the amount of debt he was carrying and omitted information from his personal financial statements to induce a bank to lend on incomplete information. You told my colleague here today that you did not commit bank fraud. Not parsing different statutes, which I understand could be. I want for clarity, are you or are you not guilty of making false statements to a financial institution, yes or no?
Yes, I pled guilty.
You said clearly to Mr. Cloud and Mr. Jordan that the Southern District of New York lawyers were being untruthful in characterizing your desire to work in the administration. Do you say again that the lawyers of the Southern District of New York are being untruthful in making that characterization, yes or no?
I'm saying that's not accurate.
Okay, so you're saying they're being untruthful. In what they wrote.
I'm not using the word untruthful. That's yours. I'm saying that that's not accurate. I did not want a role or a title in the administration.
I'm sure the lawyers.
I got the title that I wanted.
I'm sure the lawyers at the SDNY appreciate that distinction. Question, you testified today you have never been to Prague and have never been to the Czech Republic. Do you stand behind that statement?
Yes, I do.
I offer into the record an article in known conservative news magazine Mother Jones by David Cohen, in which he says he reviewed his notes from a phone call with Mr. Cohen, that Mr. Cohen said, quote, I haven't been to Prague in 14 years. I was in Prague for one afternoon 14 years ago, end quote. Question, you, as my friend Mr. Armstrong rightly inquired, offered to the committee taped information involving clients with the bat of an eye. Do you stand behind that, yes or no?
I'm sorry. I don't understand what you said so fast.
You, as my friend Mr. Armstrong rightly inquired, offered to this committee taped information involving your clients with the bat of an eye. Do you stand behind that offer?
If the chairman asks me, and I'll take it under advisement now, and it's not a problem in terms of attorney-client privilege, yes, I will turn it over.
You, as my friend Mr. Meadows pointed out, misled this committee even today in a written submission that contradicted your testimony. You have suggested you are going to review that. Are you going to review it in our next break to correct the record, yes or no?
Yes.
Question, you helped out the president's campaign or were involved in the campaign as a representative, as a spokesman, even in your words today. It was your idea for the campaign dating back to 2011. Is that accurate, yes or no?
Yes.
2011 is a year that sticks in my head. For it's the year my daughter was born, and it was the year I was diagnosed with cancer. I was not then pushing for Donald Trump to be president. I was fighting cancer. Even in 2016, I was publicly backing a certain Republican from Texas. Some might guess who it was. But you were all in. And you either wanted Donald Trump to be your president because it would be good for the country, or you did it for your own personal advancement, or both. Sort of the two options. Real Americans in my district and across the country wanted the president to be president, not in any way because he's perfect, but rather because they are sick and tired of this hellhole. They supported the president because they are sick and tired of the games that we are seeing here today. They are sick and tired of politicians who refuse to secure the border, balance our budget, restore health care freedom, and then get the hell out of their way so they can lead their life. They are mystified that we amass about $100 million of debt per hour, which means we've blown through $300, $400, $450 million during this charade in amassing debt. $450 million. They're sick and tired of a Democrat Party that willfully ignores cartel-driven asylum crisis on our border that endangers American citizens and the migrants who seek to come here. Just yesterday in Eagle Pass, Texas, Border Patrol agents arrested an MS-13 gang member. In McAllen, Texas, federal authorities are offering a reward for a man tied to Mexico's Gulf cartel for his alleged roles in various murders, kidnappings, and home invasions in South Texas. A mass Honduran migrant rush at the Texas border forced brief closure of the Laredo port. This is this week. This is what we're ignoring. This is not what we're doing for the American people while we engage in this charade. This is not what the American people sent us here to do. This is an embarrassment for our country. I talked to my beautiful wife back in Dripping Springs, Texas, just before the hearing. I said, don't bother watching. She said, as I roughly expected, don't worry, I won't. I have more important things to do. And she, like the rest of the American people, have a hell of a lot more important things to do than to watch this. I said, amen, darling. I can't help but think that is what the majority of the American people are thinking while watching this unbelievable circus. I yield back.
Ms. Prescott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a lot to do as well. I've got houses and schools to help rebuild in the Virgin Islands, expansion of voting rights, educational opportunities, criminal justice reform. Thank God the Democratic majority can walk and chew gum at the same time. So we're here with you right now. Mr. Cohen, you learned well in the 10 years that you worked with Donald Trump. What was your position with the GOP in the up to 8 months ago?
I was vice chair of the RNC Finance Committee.
You were vice chair of the finance of the Republican National Committee, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I do want to say I was a Democrat until Steve Wynn found out I was a Democrat and made me switch parties.
That would be a
said it
smart
wasn't
thing
right
to
for
do.
a Democrat to be the vice chair.
Good. Let's get to it. I only have a little bit of time. On behalf of the many members here who have expressed
to your family, our apologies to your family. But I want to apologize for the inappropriate comments and tweets that have been made by other members of this body. And as a former prosecutor and as former counsel on House ethics, I think that at the very least there should be a referral to the Ethics Committee of witness intimidation or tampering under USC 1512 of my colleague Matt Gaetz, and it may be possibly him being referred for a criminal prosecution. So I want to put that on the record. On May 2nd, 2018, the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, who was his personal attorney like you, appeared on Fox News and referred to the president's reimbursement to you for the $130 payment for Stephanie Clifford as part of a retainer. And on May 3rd, 2018, one day after Mr. Giuliani's appearance, the president tweeted, and I quote, "Mr. Cohen, an attorney, received a monthly retainer not from the campaign and having nothing to do with the campaign, from which he entered into, through reimbursement, a private contract between two parties known as a non-disclosure agreement, or NDA. The Office of Government Ethics, which is the agency which the federal government with responsibility over what the president needs to report publicly about his assets, was puzzled by this, it seems, and they were skeptical that a retainer was actually in place and asked to see the retainer agreement on call of May 8th with the president. The president's personal counsel, Sherry Dillon, replied that she would, and I quote, "not permit OGE staff to read the agreement because it is privileged." Ms. Dillon would not even let OGE staff come to her office to review the retainer agreement. Mr. Cohen, in a court filing made in August of last year, federal prosecutors stated that, quote, "in truth and in fact, there was no such retainer agreement." Mr. Cohen, did you ever have a retainer agreement in place with the president for the payment to Ms. Clifford?
No.
So was Mr. Giuliani's statement inaccurate?
Yes.
Was Ms. Dillon's statement about the retainer agreement inaccurate?
I'm sorry, Ms. Dillon's statement is?
About the retainer agreement. Is it inaccurate?
And her statement is what?
And her statement to them was, quote, not to permit OGE staff to read the agreement because it is privileged.
There was no agreement.
And is the president's tweet or his statement accurate?
And I'm sorry, one more time.
And his statement was, Mr. Cohen, an attorney, received a monthly retainer, not from the campaign and having nothing to do with the campaign, from which he entered in through a reimbursement.
That's not accurate.
You've mentioned some individuals to my colleague from New York, Ms. Connolly, and also in your testimony about Mr. Weisenberg and other individuals, Ms. Rona. Who are those individuals? Are they with the Trump organization?
They
and
are.
Are there other people that we should be meeting with?
So Alan Weisselberg is the chief financial officer.
Uh-huh.
The
You got to
Trump
quickly give us
organization.
as many names as you can so we can get to them.
Yes, ma'am.
As Ms. Rona, what is Ms. Rona's position?
Rona Graff is Mr. Trump's executive assistant.
And would she be able to corroborate many of the statements that you've made here?
Yes, her office is directly next to his, and she's involved in a lot that went on.
Okay, Mr. Cohen, when the president's lawyers were having the discussions with the Office of Government Ethics in 2018, did they reach out to you to talk with you about these payments?
No, ma'am.
And what did you share anything with them otherwise in any other conversation?
I do not recall, no.
Can the committee obtain more information about these facts by obtaining testimony and documents from the White House, the Trump Organization, and the president's attorneys?
I believe so.
Mr. Chair, I think that those are the individuals that we should be speaking with, and I yield back at this time.
Committee will now stand in recess again. We will come back. Listen up, 35 minutes after the last vote begins. So for Mr. Cohen, we're talking about probably about an hour or so. All right.
So much.
Great. He also wanted just to ensure, by making the statement, and I said it in my testimony, there is no Russia, there is no collusion, there is no deal. He goes, it's all a witch hunt, and he goes, this stuff has to end.
Did you take those comments to be suggestive of what might flavor your testimony?
Sir, he's been saying that to me for many, many months. And at the end of the day, I knew exactly what he wanted me to say.
And why was Mr. Sekulow in the meeting?
Because he was going to be representing Mr. Trump going forward as one of his personal attorneys in this matter.
So it was sort of a handoff meeting.
Correct.
In any way, final question, did the president in any way, from your point of view, coach you in terms of how to respond to questions or the content of your testimony before a House committee?
Again, it's a difficult answer because he doesn't tell you what he wants. What he does is, again, Michael, there's no Russia, there's no collusion, there's no involvement, there's no interference. I know what he means because I've been around him for so long. So if you're asking me whether or not that's the message, that's staying on point, that's the party line that he created, that so many others are now touting, yes, that's the message that he wanted to reinforce.
Terry Moran, so reminiscent of the testimony we heard from James Comey, as Cecilia was just saying. But one of the other things that Michael Cohen has done in those conversations about his testimony over Trump Tower is implicate others. Jay Sekulow. He also talked about Jared Kushner's lawyer as well, Abby Lowell, and whether they knew that they weren't necessarily telling the truth as they edited his testimony. That could be fodder for more hearings.
That's right. As you pointed out, they are now amassing a witness list here. And with every name that Michael Cohen drops, there are more people who are going to have to hire their own lawyers, it sounds like, because he is essentially implicating them in his crimes. But the point of the hearing for the American people are, you know, President Trump and what he has done. And Governor Christie was talking earlier before this last break about running against Donald Trump and finding him essentially bulletproof politically, especially on the issue of veterans. John McCain, that infamous comment. You know, there's the old saying in Chicago politics: we don't want nobody sent. Somebody sent Donald Trump. For whatever reason, there are millions upon millions of Americans who believe he fights for them, and so they're going to fight for him. And until that's broken, I think what we're going to see is what we saw in this hearing, that rock-solid partisan divide. Republicans still staunchly behind him. White evangelical Christians still at 75–80% support. I don't think what we've heard today so far, while it will stir up a lot more activity, congressional activity, I'm not sure it's going to move the dial politically.
That is the politics, Chris Christie, though. The other point that Michael Cohen could not talk about when we went to the Southern District, he was asked about his communications with President Trump following the raid on the FBI raid on his offices, on Michael Cohen's offices and homes back in 2017. That suggests at least that the Southern District is looking at the issue of obstruction.
Right, and I think, you know, that's what George has been saying all along, that the Southern District is the much more dangerous thing. And today, America got a preview of that. You know, prosecutors need tour guides. They're most effective when they have a tour guide through a particular world. Michael Cohen is showing himself today to be a tour guide and have a particular point of view. And when he's corroborated by written evidence, I think he's an effective one. But that last bit of testimony you played in the back and forth, I think that's where he gets himself a little out there, because when he's saying, I knew, you're accusing the President of the United States of something, and you can't use that, not effectively, I don't think. So Cohen, you know, I understand what he's trying to do, and he may be very well telling the truth from his perspective. Maybe that is what he thought, but it's very hard to impugn the President of the United States based upon that, and for prosecutors to do it.
And don't forget that I think one of the purposes of the question earlier about the conversations after the raid was about a possible pardon. When we're talking about obstruction, I think one of the things they were getting at is, did anyone dangle a pardon? Not just the president himself, anyone connected to the president, related to the president. And that question wasn't answered. That's one of the areas where he's saying, I can't talk about it, because there's an ongoing active investigation.
going on there.
You can be sure he answered them, though.
Oh,
they
for
know.
sure.
The guys in the Southern, the guys and women in Southern know.
And we have to remember that. Like, what the Southern District of New York knows more than we do now today.
Volumes more, right? I mean, when he didn't answer those two sets of questions, what you now know is he's already answered them for the people in the Southern District of New York. They already know, and they've already been
anything
getting the
that says he can't answer.
And
he's answered.
And they've asked him not to talk about it. Right. Meaning they still think it's important enough and so active that they've said to him, please do not address these questions in front of Congress.
And Chris, how big a threat to President Trump if the Southern District goes inside, crosses that red line that he said shouldn't be crossed, crosses the red line of finances, goes inside the Trump organization?
Well, I mean, listen, they are inside of it already. You heard Michael Cohen talking about Alan Weisselberg, and Alan Weisselberg's
Chief Financial Officer.
Right, a different involvement. Now, you know, this is a guy who has been there since Donald Trump's father was running the organization. Okay, so this is a guy with enormous history. They've already gotten into him. You heard him drop Rona Graff's name, who's his longtime executive assistant. So that red line, in my view, has already been crossed. Michael Cohen's signaling that already by the way he's talking. And I think the other thing we have to remember about this is that the idea, and Terry said before, a lot of people are going to have to get lawyers. They already have them. And there's no doubt that these people, my guess is, have already been contacted in one way, shape, or form, either through subpoena or informal requests to lawyers to start giving information based on what Cohen told them probably weeks, if not months ago.
And remember, there's a difference between short-term risk and long-term risk, right? Short-term risk, you've got to look at Don Jr. and anyone else who's in the Trump organization, et cetera. Is there any kind of immediate risk for them legally based on digging into the Trump organization, et cetera? That's where the Southern District would be working on. There is no immunity for Don Jr. or Jared Kushner or whoever it is. The only immunity here could be for the president himself.
Okay, let's go to Mary Bruce, senior congressional correspondent up on Capitol Hill. You're learning more as you talk to members of Congress about the kind of follow-on they're expecting.
Yeah, George, we've been out here speaking to members of the committee about the groundwork that they seem to be laying here through their testimony, and many Democrats have said that this is just the beginning, that there are many more close to President Trump that they need to hear from here publicly, including several members have told me Don Jr., the president's son. They've also thrown around the name Roger Stone, Steve Bannon, other people who may have been involved in some of these issues close to the president. We've also talked to some of the Republicans on this committee. Not surprisingly, they are continuing to rail against Cohen for his lies, but fascinatingly, they are not speaking still about the substance of Cohen's claims. Jim Jordan, the top Republican on the committee, still refusing to answer questions about the veracity of the documents here presented by Michael Cohen. And not surprisingly, George, Democrats still don't want to talk about impeachment. They say that is simply too soon. They're simply dealing with the facts in front of them today.
Yeah, and Mary, they're staying off of that. I don't know if you've had the chance to ask some of the Republicans as they've come out, but I wonder if you have talked to them at all about the point that Chris Christie was making, this whole strategy they seem to have of not really defending the president in any substantive way, simply attacking Michael Cohen.
Yeah, that is the big question that we are trying to pose here to all of the Republicans as they come out of this hearing. It's very clear that they are in lockstep when it comes to their messaging against Cohen, but they haven't had any response yet to what he's been saying, to these allegations against the president, to the evidence that Cohen claims to be presenting here today. You know, Cohen has said, look, you don't have to take him at his word, that's why he brought these documents. That's why he has these checks. And Republicans so far have been unified in not wanting to take on directly those substantive claims. What they will ultimately say, if we can get through to them, will be very interesting to see, George.
Okay, Mary, thanks. I want to play another exchange, one that Michael Cohen had with Katie Hill, Democratic Congresswoman from California, over the hush money payments to Stormy Daniels and the president's involvement.
On February 13th, 2018, Mr. Cohen, you sent a statement to the reporters that said, quote, I used my own personal funds to facilitate a payment of $130,000 to Ms. Stephanie Clifford, and neither the Trump organization nor the Trump campaign was party to the transaction with Ms. Clifford, and neither reimbursed me for the payment either directly or indirectly. Was the statement false?
The statement is not false. I purposefully left out Mr. Trump individually from that statement.
Okay. Why did you say it that way?
Because that's what was discussed to do between myself, Mr. Trump, and Alan Weisselberg.
So it was carefully worded?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Mr. Cohen, a reporter for the magazine Vanity Fair has reported that she interviewed you the very next day on February 14th, 2018, about the payment and reimbursement. And she wrote, quote, "Last February 14th, I interviewed Cohen in his office about the statement he gave the FEC in which he said Trump didn't know about the Stormy payment or reimburse him for it." Do you recall this meeting with the reporter?
I do.
The reporter also wrote, "Trump called while I was there. I couldn't hear much, but he wanted to go over what the public messaging would be." Is that accurate?
It is.
Did the president call you while you were having a meeting with the reporter?
Yes.
Did the president call you to coordinate on public messaging about the payments to Ms. Clifford's in or around February 2018?
Yes.
What did the president ask or suggest that you say about the payments or reimbursements?
He was not knowledgeable of these reimbursements, and he wasn't knowledgeable of my actions.
He asked you to say that?
Yes, ma'am.
So what we have there is Michael Cohen saying the president told him not to tell the truth, told him about those payments. At the same time, Cecilia Vega, you cover the White House every single day, and we know the president was denying any relationship with Stormy Daniels, was denying any knowledge about the payments, including this exchange on Air Force One.
Know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels? Then why did Michael Cohen make this if there was no truth or allegation?
You have to ask Michael Cohen. Michael's my attorney, and you'll have to ask Michael.
Do you know where he got the money to make that payment?
No, I don't know.
Well, apparently he'd already had those discussions with Michael Cohen.
They've been all over the map on this one from the very beginning. I mean, the president on camera there, his lawyers have been on camera giving various explanations for who knew what when. It really, though, if we all just pause and think about what we're talking about here, the president of the United States allegedly making payments to a porn star to keep an affair quiet. I mean, it just gets back to the remarkable nature of what we're witnessing on a daily basis that has become sort of common practice, that we're just talking about payments to a porn star and covering this White House. And speaking of the porn star, George, Stormy Daniels has a statement out right now that our team just got, and she is, she and Michael Cohen are bitter rivals. She says that he was among those who threatened her many times, and she's now saying, "Thank you for having the courage at long last to begin to tell the truth."
It turned out, Cecilia, thank you, it turned out, Dan Abrams, that there was a lot more talk about Russia than we expected over the course of this hearing. One of the headlines that the president might like from Michael Cohen is that he said no collusion, knows of no collusion whatsoever by the president during the campaign. And the fact that Michael Cohen was willing to talk about it so openly would at least suggest that Robert Mueller's done with him.
Yeah, it sure seems that way. The fact that he specifically referred to the Southern District of New York suggests that they're the ones he's still talking to. They're the ones with the active investigation. They're the ones who still feel that Cohen has relevant testimony to provide. So it may simply be that he wasn't in on any discussions. There may be that there's no collusion, that there's, I mean, we don't know. But I'll say one other thing, which is the Republicans today spent a lot of time trying to undermine his credibility. We've talked about that. And they referred to the crimes that he's committed here: the lying, the bank fraud, the failure to pay taxes. These are the same possible crimes that people in Trump's orbit could be facing. And you just have to be careful, because one of the arguments up to this point has been, this is minor stuff. Come on. Flynn got caught lying. Oh, Papadopoulos was lying about this. This is minor stuff, etc. Well, they're making it out now to be major stuff in Congress now. The Republicans are. They're making it just clear this is a big deal. This stuff matters. And, you know, we'll see whether those words come back to haunt them.
Listen, I think one of the things, if we look forward now, we've spent a lot of time today talking about the witness list. There's going to be a real Donnybrook between the Southern District of New York and Congress, because the Southern District obviously has a lot more work to do. And they're not going to want a lot of those people up on that witness stand, because a lot of those people are not going to have been either sentenced already, like Michael Cohen. They might not be immunized. They might demand immunity to go up there and speak. And you're going to get into this fight now that happens often between prosecutors' offices and legislative bodies, where the legislative body wants to put on a show like we had today, and the prosecutors are saying, stop, give us time to make the criminal case. So I think one of the really interesting fights is going to be through, you know, the next months is going to be the fight between the lawyers at the Southern District, who believe me know how to fight, and members of Congress who want to put on a show. And it's going to be very interesting to see how that fight gets resolved, because if they don't have more hearings, people are going to be asking why. And if they blame it on the prosecutors, there are going to be a lot of people who are unsatisfied.
And Pierre Thomas, one of the other things we're waiting for, of course, is the Mueller report. Lots of different reports over the last several weeks of whether it's done, when it's going to be done, what we're actually going to see from Robert Mueller and the Attorney General, William Barr. But we did learn from Michael Cohen, as I was just talking to Dan Abrams about his testimony, at least, that he had no evidence of collusion. And we've had some warnings from the Justice Department, perhaps not to expect too much from Robert Mueller's report.
Well, you're absolutely right, George. I mean, it's clear from Cohen's testimony today, he offered no detail about any knowledge regarding any direct collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians. And that's a fact. We don't know whether he would have been in a position to know that kind of information, but as far as those who are supporting the president, he didn't offer any details like that. In terms of the Mueller investigation, we do have every indication that it is nearing a close, and that confidential report will go to Attorney General Bill Barr in the coming weeks. And you're right. We don't yet know how much of that report will be provided in public to Congress and for the American public to view.
Another headline from Michael Cohen, he denied again, Pierre, ever going to Prague, which is, of course, one of the major allegations in that so-called Steele dossier. Also denied knowing of any kind of compromising tapes of the president, another one of the more sensational allegations.
That's right. Again, he was very helpful in terms of making the case that he had no direct knowledge regarding, again, Russian collusion or anything like that. But as Governor Christie and others have pointed out over and over again, the Southern District remains an ongoing headache, potentially for the president and those around him. And I was struck again today how Mr. Weisselberg was placed in terms of the crosshairs of Congress, in terms of bringing him there and asking him more questions about what the president did or didn't know about these payments and what the president's intent was in making the payments to Stormy Daniels and the Playboy Playmate.
Okay, Pierre, thanks. I want to bring in Alan Dershowitz now, professor emeritus at Harvard Law School, has been an ally of the president, has been outspoken about his belief that the Congress should not be impeaching President Trump. Alan, I know you've been watching today. What struck you?
Well, first of all, I'm not an ally of the president. I voted against him. I'm against most of his policies. I'm an ally of the Constitution. What struck me most is how much lawyer-client privileged information was revealed in this testimony. I was shocked that the president's lawyers weren't there actively objecting to disclosures made about conversations between the president and his lawyers. Even if the information provides proof of crimes, that's not an exception. The exception to the lawyer-client privilege is only that the conversation itself be fraudulent or criminal. If it provides evidence of a crime later, that's within the lawyer-client privilege. So that was surprising to me. I just don't understand it. Maybe the president's feeling is let it all hang out. His credibility doesn't seem very strong. There won't be a lot of evidence of collusion. But look, I agree with the previous person that the president's big problems are in the Southern District of New York and other U.S. attorneys' offices. I do think the Mueller report will give a roadmap for further investigation and will not contain any smoking guns or proof of unlawful collusion. But this was not a good day for the president. Clearly, to have his lawyer and intimate disclose so many things about him that don't belong in the public domain. And it really does raise questions about how powerful the lawyer-client privilege is and whether today we're really weakening it.
Isn't one of the questions there, though, that in so many of these activities that Michael Cohen was acting more as executive vice president of the Trump organization, not as his attorney. He was only his personal attorney in that respect after Donald Trump was elected.
Well, no, the role of somebody like Cohen is very complicated, and the rules of the Bar Association are that you basically resolve doubts in favor of the lawyer-client privilege when a lawyer acts in multiple capacities. Today, the practice of law is very different than it was 100 years ago. Many lawyers give business advice. Many lawyers engage in activities like, for example, settling a case with Stormy Daniels, resolving. That's acting in a lawyer-client capacity. Now, if you take it to the bar, they may say, no, this wasn't a lawyer-client capacity, but the lawyer should always err by saying, I'm not really prepared to answer that question until I get a ruling that it's not covered by the lawyer-client privilege. Cohen seemed very anxious to answer every possible question, whether because he hopes to get a reduction in sentence or because he wants to do the right thing. People can judge that for themselves. But he was too anxious to answer questions. I think a prudent lawyer would have said, let me consult before I answer that question, because it may breach lawyer-client privilege. Maybe not, but you should err on the side of protecting the lawyer-client privilege.
Alan, thank you. Chris, on that point, Michael Cohen did say today that and nothing he says before the Congress today is going to help reduce his sentence. What's key there is the information he's giving to the Southern District.
It's the work that he's doing with the Southern District, and the fact, the words that he said today that would send a chill up my spine at the White House would be, I'm in constant contact with the Southern District. I mean, again, now they have Michael Cohen and Rick Gates. And we had no discussion of the inaugural today. I'm interested. No one asked Michael Cohen about the inaugural.
John Sarbanes asked one quick question about it. That was it.
But I mean, I think you know you've got 2 tour guides now in there, George, and that's got to be really concerning given what Michael Cohen said today, and the fact that they got no substantive defense from anybody.
And that is all we have time for. Thank you all very much. We're all going to be back here, I think, at around 4 a.m. tomorrow for the President's press conference from Vietnam and that summit with Kim Jong-un. Of course, a full report on that on World News Tonight with David Muir tonight. He is in Hanoi. Have a good afternoon.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Oh, everybody, welcome to our show on this Monday morning. We're having All My Children reunion.
And we've got little kids' big problems.
Yes, and we have a big DNA surprise. You don't want to miss that. And the greatest audience in television!
From the crossroads of the world, Times Square, New York City, it's Strahan and Sarah. Escape for an hour. We all need it.
Hey, hey, hey. Happy Monday, everybody. Happy Monday. To our third co-hosts out there, our audience. And thank you guys for joining us on this Monday morning. How was your weekend? How you doing?
It was good. I was momming. That's about as crazy as it gets.
What does momming entail now? Like that, like pushing through the park?
No, we have been passing a cold around, all 4 of us, and anyone with young kids knows this. They just keep bringing things home. It's like they're little traveling Petri dishes that you have to like take care of then, and then they give it to you, and then no one takes care of you.
And then you give it to me?
That's what was happening back there. That's what friends are for. No, but on a Monday, how was your weekend? Did you?
My weekend was great. I chilled. I didn't do much. Didn't do anything. I went to the movies. I see what men want.
Yeah.
I went to see that. And you still won't figure it out, ladies, even if you see the movie.
Not even a movie can sum that up.
Not even a movie can sum that up. That, and I took a nice little drive with some buddies, and I got some buddies in the cars like I am. We took a nice little
You're such a boy.
drive.
Like,
yeah.
we played with our cars. It was so fun. We were all in our cars.
We're simple. Men are simple creatures.
I know. We're trying too
simple.
hard to understand you, and it's just like right there.
Yeah, I'm just feed us, and we're happy.
That's true.
That's all
I
it
think
takes.
we're starting out on a topic that's perfect for a Monday. Okay,
Yes.
so a recent survey done by the firm One Poll of working Americans shows 48% of them consider themselves workaholics, admitting that they work an average of 4 hours per week. Additional, not that's not much of a worker bee. And they spend at least another 4 hours just thinking about work outside of that.
They work like 4 hours extra for free, they spend hours thinking about it after the fact. Yeah.
Yeah, and then researchers found that feeling too busy to take a vacation, worrying about work and an off day, like taking a day off, and checking emails immediately after waking up are top 3 symptoms of this syndrome, workaholism.
Workaholism. I saw this survey and I said, am I a workaholic? Because I have 20 jobs.
At least.
Yeah, at least 20 jobs. I mean, I see myself on TV and I'm like, how am I there?
Yeah. Or the other day when you looked up and you go, I don't even remember doing that.
Yeah.
It was a full interview.
Yeah, there are certain days I have those moments, but I don't think so, because my work brings me joy.
Yeah.
And I love doing it, so I think it's different. Plus, when I look at the top 3 things, I have no problem taking a vacation. I'm not worried about work on a day off. Guarantee you that. And checking emails immediately when you wake up in the morning, I have to because of GMA.
Right.
But other than that, I wouldn't do that either. So I don't think I'm a workaholic. I just find joy in the work that I do. But my whole life and my identity is not tied up to what I do. What I am as a person is not what I do for a living. So that's how I keep those things separate. But I'm curious with you, do you think you're a workaholic?
I am no longer a workaholic, but I think I spent the majority of my 20s into my 30s being a workaholic. I blinked my eyes and was like, I'm a single woman, no kids, no marriage. Not that that's for everyone, but it was what I had thought I wanted and thought I would have by then. And I remember kind of reassessing. You get the life you choose. Like, I was choosing that and not even realizing it, thinking I was going to a guy was just going to show up in the produce aisle.
Well, you
waited for a while on that
one. Hey, you're over there, you're squeezing avocados. You got to keep on moving, lady.
Any minute now, he'll come see me here. But no, that's when I went online, because I remember thinking we sell our souls to a job.
Yeah.
And they're never going to keep you warm at night. And you work out like crazy for this vapid idea of body image. But when it comes to finding your best friend, we want it to be easy and comfortable. And we want it to just happen to us.
But you ended up getting married because you met your husband on a dating site.
On OkCupid.com. I'm like a poster child now. But
you signed up for that one because it was free.
Because I wasn't going to pay for love. I mean, I am my father's daughter. I'm
just saying. Oh,
it
boy.
was free, so you have to weed through more. But I think we create the lives we want, and you have to be proactive for the most important things in your life.
Yeah, you make the life, you create the life you want.
Yeah.
Great way to do it.
So.
And this next thing, this is yours here.
This is mine?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Do you remember last week when we celebrated National Fettuccine Alfredo Day? It's like Christmas, you guys. Like, we wait all year long.
Vaguely. I remember eating a ton of pasta, and I dozed off, and now I'm back here. I remember what the heck happened.
It's a carb coma. But you definitely ate too much, by the way. You hit it a little too hard. But today is National Don't Cry Over Spilled Milk Day, which I'm sure you've all marked your calendars for. And as a mom of young kids, this is a very important holiday. So as our sponsor, Tommy Tippy, sent us this new no knockover cup to demo. It's an open top cup, which is terrifying when you have young children. But the amazing thing about the no knock cup is, wait for it, but look, you can't flip it.
So if the kid goes to grab it and whatever, oh, that's pretty cool. I mean, I wish I had this at my Super Bowl party. My carpets would have appreciated it. Everybody messing up my house.
Yeah, I did notice that.
But you should take that home today.
No, I am.
Take it home.
Tommy Tippy, no tippy cuppy.
Tommy Tippy, no tippy cuppy. I like that. And then we got one more quick thing. There's this guy. His name is Raphael Samuel. He's in Mumbai, India.
Oh my
and
gosh.
he announced. I couldn't believe it. It was one of the funniest things. He announced the justice system. He has to right or wrong. He's going to go to court for it. He wants to sue his parents because they had him 27 years ago. He's suing his parents for giving birth to him. He said you cannot create people without their consent. It is wrong. He said the children owe their parents nothing. And furthermore, parents should provide for their children their entire lives. Yeah. And he goes, your parents had you instead of a toy or a dog. You owe them nothing. You are their entertainment.
He has clearly never been around a baby or a toddler. That is like laborious. That is not entertaining.
But you know the crazy thing is, both of his parents are lawyers.
Yes.
His mom said, well, if I could have met you before you were born, then you wouldn't be here.
And they also said they're not going to go easy on him in court. They'll destroy him. But it's all in humor. They actually all seem to have a good relationship.
Yeah, because he's living at home. They're taking care of him.
He also said, I'm not unhappy. I'm not a miserable person. I just don't want to be alive.
Well, he wants his parents to take care of him. And I always tell my kids, like my daughter's working now. My son, he's in college getting ready to wrap up his second degree. And I said, it's time to get off daddy's scholarship, son. It's time to get out there on your own. And then the twins, of course, they're 14, and I got them out there looking for jobs.
Start him young. young, Michael. Start him
We're going to
up.
start them young. And right now, coming up, everybody's going to take a break. But when we come back, we're going to ask a bunch of children for their help in solving one of our country's big problems. We'll be right back.
ABC Strahan and Sarah, brought to you by Swiffer. Stop cleaning, start Swiffering.
Okay, I'll admit I didn't keep my place as clean as I would like because I'm way too busy. Who's got the time to chase around dirt, dust, and hair? So now I use heavy-duty Swiffer sweeper and dusters. For hard-to-reach places, Duster makes it easy to clean. It captures dust in one swipe. Ha! Gotcha. And Sweeper heavy-duty cloths lock away twice as much dirt and dust. It gets stuff deep in the grooves other tools can miss. You know what? My place is a lot cleaner now. Stop cleaning. Start Swiffering.
Reese's eggs are back, and we hid them somewhere you'll never find. Psych! We put them everywhere. Grocery stores and supermarkets, gas stations and chiropractors' offices, bowling alleys and grocery stores, which we already mentioned. Not sorry, Reese's.
90% of women have a skincare routine, but what about a lip care routine? Pay your lips some attention. The Chapstick Total Hydration Collection. Exfoliate, nourish, naturally enhance your lips. Chapstick, put your lips first.
I'm a close talker, so I was excited about all-new Colgate Total. Its breakthrough formula does more.
Wonderful.
Sensitivity, strengthens teeth, it kills germs through my whole mouth.
I like your confidence.
Thanks, Mr. Lee. Now there's no such thing as too close.
Yes, there is.
No, there's not.
Yes, there is.
No, there's not.
Okay.
All new Colgate Total. Do more for your whole mouth.
Finally, something that works. Helped all my digestive problems.
My immune system says thank you.
People don't just say this about any probiotic. Culturelle promotes digestive balance and immune defense with the proven probiotic. It's #1 for a reason.
I need you to bring the energy today. Let's go. All right, push yourself. Come off the bike. Okay, come on, stay with me. Strong arms. Engage that core. Everybody meet me on. Let's go. I'm going to change your bike position. You're going to feel this. Show me what you got. Come on. Make yourself proud.
What is the best you got today?
Woo-hoo! That's what separates you from everyone else. Only with Nordic Track Studio Cycle.
Allergies can stand in the way of enjoying the moment. Break through with Allegra, the fastest non-drowsy allergy relief. In just 1 hour, it starts tackling tough allergy symptoms for 24 hours of relief. Get back to the moment with Allegra.
In an era of online retail where everything is just a few clicks away, buying a car should be no different. That's why at Carvana, you can buy a car 100% online. We made it easy to browse, view, and buy from over 10,000 cars. You can even trade in your old car, all while binge watching your favorite TV show. Afterwards, we'll deliver your car to you. Or you can pick it up from one of our car vending machines. Either way, your car comes with a 7-day return policy. So grab a seat, relax in your comfy pants, and enjoy the new way to buy a car at Carvana.
Seresto, Seresto, Seresto.
Jake.
Seresto, Seresto, Seresto.
Whatever your dog brings home to you, it shouldn't be fleas and ticks. Seresto gives your dog 8 continuous months of flea and tick protection in an easy-to-use, non-greasy collar.
Seresto, Seresto, Seresto.
Oh, no, Jake.
Seresto.
8 months.
Seresto, Seresto, Seresto.
If we want this thing to work, you're going to need to connect.
I don't do emotional attachments.
I hate to tell you, you have a heart and the capacity to feel.
This is what happens when you believe in true love. Idiot!
Is she always like this? No, she's usually meaner.
Whiskey Cavalier. Series premiere tonight, 10/9 Central on ABC.
I'm here trying to find an audition dress.
I live in Midfield, Texas, and this is what I do all day. Let's see what you got.
Listen to The Investigation, the new podcast from ABC News. Exclusive reporting, news-making interviews, every step of the way and behind the scenes in the final stretch and fallout of The Investigation. Listen free on Apple Podcasts.
Be another government shutdown later this week. It's become clear that adults are incapable of fixing the problems facing our country. So we decided to see if children have better ideas in a new segment called Little Kids, Big Problems.
When it's time to get like any politicians, presidents, whatever it may be, we have to have an election, right?
Yeah.
You understand that?
Elections.
Okay. But only about half of Americans vote. How can we get more people to show up to vote, and how can we make voting fun?
I would say that we make a billion, gazillion, trillion posters and post them everywhere in America.
Oh, yeah. What about if you voted and then slime came down?
No, because I don't want it to get stuck in my hair. Stuck in their hair. So I don't want to get my hair all messed up, and I don't want to chop it off and be bald. Yes. Like you.
Okay, so let me ask you another question.
I mean, look, we got some balls right here.
We're starting right out of the gate on the hair show.
That's my style. One thing that's going on when it comes to like trees and the environment is global warming. So how can we make the earth cooler? Because the earth is getting hot.
First of all, are you serious? Have you been outside today?
I know, not today here. It's freezing here right now.
If you were president tomorrow, what's the first thing you'd do?
I would probably shut down the schools.
Why?
Yeah, no more school for us.
For good or just like a snow day?
For good.
Go ahead, shout it out.
I think I would buy a Lamborghini. I would put a tarp in it and then put slime in it.
You slime a Lamborghini?
And after that, I would buy myself 3 mansions like LeBron James.
So one of the toughest things when you're an adult is asking your boss for a raise. We need to know how to do that.
We're your bosses.
So we're your bosses. So each one of you tell us how we should ask for a raise.
Tell us why we should give you a raise.
We're going to start right here. Go ahead.
See?
Yes.
Yeah, you got this.
Give me money!
Oh, shoot. Maybe not that one.
I need to use it to pay for a donation, but it's really not. And
that should be a complete aside so we don't hear it.
So you're going to tell us you need it so you can give a donation, but you're going to keep the donation for yourself.
Yes.
How do you like prison?
I just really need you to give me a raise. Like, everything's been just so hard for the past 5 months.
Okay, you get it. I was very impressed. Oh, then you're going to dance out the office? Give me the raise back.
You saved that
Give me the
for the whole
raise
way.
back.
No, my raise.
What age should you start dating?
He has daughters that are closer to your age. How about you're going to ask his daughter out on a date?
You got to talk to me, her father, to ask for permission. What do you want? What? What's so funny? What's so funny?
Nothing's funny. Can I go on a date with your daughter?
Oh, sure. How should you discipline your kid?
You should call the popo on them.
Call the popo?
Yeah, you should call the popo.
You don't call the police on your kids?
Yeah.
A lot of adults, they haven't fallen in love yet.
Yeah.
So how do you guys suggest they find their husband or their wife?
Well, if you think you're unattractive, just go on Tinder. No.
If you think you're unattractive, just go on Tinder.
See, and I didn't pick Tinder.
I tell you what, and these kids, they just give it to you straight. And we gotta thank all those kids. They always make our day
great.
whenever we get a chance to talk to them. And coming up, this is gonna really make our year.
Yes.
We're talking to the cast of All My Children. They're gonna reunite right here on Cohen and Sarah. We'll be right back. Oh.
fresh-smelling home, but some air fresheners use heavy, overwhelming scents. Introducing Febreze One, a new range of innovative air fresheners with no heavy perfumes that you can feel good about using in your home to deliver a light, natural-smelling freshness. Febreze One neutralizes stale, stuffy odors and releases a subtle hint of fragrance like bamboo or lemongrass ginger. To eliminate odors with no heavy perfumes, try new Febreze One. Brand power helping you buy better.
We all care about amazing taste. That's why we've been making the best mayonnaise for over 100 years. Best Foods. We're on the side of food.
Sweetheart, can you please finish your breakfast? Hi, sweetheart. Oh, Sarah, can you remind me to give Baxter's flea and tick treatment next week?
Dad, can you remind me to remind Mom about the flea and tick thing?
Remind me to remind Sarah to remind Mom about the flea and tick thing.
I'll remind you to.
Sure. You can try to remember the flea and tick treatment every month, or you can go to your vet and get
Bravecto, the only continuous protection that lasts up to 12 weeks with just one tasty chew.
Do you remember where we parked the car?
so you don't have to remember. Bravecto, only from your vet.
Okay, Max, time to help Mrs. Tyler reach her health goals. I'm in. But first, Shelfie. Oh, yeah.
The great tasting nutrition of Ensure with up to 30 grams of protein and 26 vitamins and minerals. Ensure for strength and energy.
Wake up to great tasting flavor. Belvita breakfast biscuits. Flavors like delicious blueberry or decadent chocolate, gently baked in a tasty biscuit. Belvita breakfast biscuits. It's time to taste the day.
Emerge restored, replenished, fortified. Emerge every day with Emergen-C, packed with B vitamins, electrolytes, antioxidants, plus more vitamin C than 10 oranges. Why not feel this good every day? Emerge and see.
Oats have a soluble fiber called beta-glucan, which can help lower cholesterol when part of a heart-healthy diet. What's more, these oats have no artificial flavors, preservatives, or added colors. Now that's something to celebrate.
A great dishwasher needs a great detergent. So GE Appliances tested Finish on over 5,000 dishes, proving dish after sparkling dish that it's not just clean, it's finished. Switch to Finish Quantum, recommended by GE Appliances.
People are fighting type 2 diabetes with fitness, friends, and the pill that starts with F. Farxiga, along with diet and exercise, helps lower A1C in adults with type 2 diabetes. Although it's not for weight loss, it may help you lose weight.
Do not take if allergic to Farxiga. Symptoms of a serious allergic reaction include rash, swelling, difficulty breathing or swallowing. Stop taking and seek medical help right away. Tell your doctor right away if you have red color in urine, or pain while you urinate, or a genital area infection, since a rare but serious genital infection may be life-threatening. Do not take Farxiga if you have severe kidney problems, are on dialysis, or have bladder cancer. Other serious side effects include dehydration, genital yeast and bacterial infections in women and men, urinary tract infections, low blood sugar, and sudden kidney problems. Stop taking Farxiga and call your doctor right away if you have symptoms of ketoacidosis, which is serious and may lead to death.
Ask your doctor about Farxiga and visit farxiga.com for savings. If you can't afford your medication, AstraZeneca may be able to help.
Parodontax Complete Protection. If you see traces of blood when you brush or floss, which kind of toothpaste do you choose? One for healthy gums or one for strong teeth? You don't have to choose. Complete Protection from Parodontax has 8 designed benefits for healthy gums and strong teeth. Take control and leave bleeding gums behind with Complete Protection from Parodontax.
Your digestive system has billions of bacteria, but life can throw them off balance. Realign yourself with Align Probiotic. And try Align Gummies with prebiotics and probiotics to help support digestive health.
It's the beginning of the end.
Something feels off.
One stunner after another.
The situation is gonna kill me.
And at week's end, don't miss the shocking 5 final minutes.
Oh my God.
ABC's General Hospital.
Our heartbeats boom, boom, boom. If we want this thing to work, we're gonna need to connect.
I don't do emotional attachments.
I hate to tell you, you have a heart and the capacity to feel. Take that back.
This is what happens when you believe in true love. Idiot!
Is she always like this? No, she's usually meaner.
Whiskey Cavalier. Series premiere tonight, 10/9 Central on ABC.
2011, the iconic soap opera All My Children said farewell to ABC after 41 years on the air. It's a long time.
That's a long time.
And today we have the honor and the privilege of reuniting some of the most memorable cast members.
Please welcome resident hunky bad boy J.R. Chandler, played by Jacob Young.
How you doing, Jacob? Good to see you, man. Thank you for coming.
So nice to have you guys
It's great to be
Come
here.
on in.
Hello.
You're looking good, man. You're looking good. And next up, we have Erica's eccentric best friend, mother to Tad, Opal Cortland herself, Jill Larson. Hey, Jill. How are you? Good to see you. Very nice to see you.
So nice to meet you. Come on in. We're going to fill this house with all your friends. And now we have Dixie Cooney, the sweetheart in town and mother to JR. Please welcome Katie McLean.
Hey, Katie.
How
are you? Good to see you.
Thank you so much for having
Oh, of course.
us.
You're
Love
kidding
your
me.
jacket. Thank you.
So lovely.
And up next, the handsome lawyer in town, Erica Kane's on-again, off-again flame, Jackson Montgomery himself, Walt Willie.
What's up, Walt? Good to see you. Great to see you.
So nice to meet you. Come on in.
And finally, the woman you love to hate, the Pine Valley vixen herself, Erica Kane, in the flesh, Susan Lucci. Hey, Susan, how are you? It is great to see you.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Hi. Here, we'll sing it.
Oh, we'll make it fit.
Yeah.
I got wide hips, so I wasn't.
This is so cool, seeing you guys all together. Like
Yes.
This is really cool.
It's cool for us.
It's cool for us.
We can just staring at each other.
Exactly.
Thank you for this opportunity to be together.
But no, we're happy to have everybody together because I grew up. Like, I'm looking at your faces, but I can't believe this myself. And there's so many people who grew up on this. At 1 p.m., they turn on the TV, and you are the faces that entertain them every day. And now they turn on TV at 1 and they get us. So could you tell them that we actually aren't that bad?
Well, we'll see how this goes, Michael. It's possible we could actually validate this whole thing.
Yes, please do. Please help us.
We'll wait for the endorsement until the June 7th.
We promise it'll be coming before we leave.
Well, the most amazing thing is that we've all had this ongoing relationship with the audience, you know, on a daily basis, which, you know, continues to this day, which is amazing.
Yeah,
so,
who else is in your home at
so
lunch
grateful
except
for that.
neighbors and good friends?
And now that I'm out in daylight and I go through airports and, you know, on sidewalks, I mean, people stop as if all my children never went off. You know, they still talk about the storyline.
It's a testament to the great work you guys did.
In so many people's lives for so many decades.
Yeah. They grew up with all of you. They feel like your family.
Yeah.
But on a more serious note, Susan, you recently revealed that you suffered from a heart issue.
I did, yes. It was in October and very, very surprising because I've never had anything. But to make a long story short, I wound up going to the emergency room of St. Francis Hospital, the heart hospital, and I was told after some tests that I had a 90% blockage in my main artery and a 75% blockage, just a little lesson here in the V part. And we were all shocked because I've never had anything. But once it happened, I'm feeling great. I had a wonderful doctor and I'm really fine. And I just wanted to pass my good fortune forward because I was so lucky and I know how lucky I was. And I just wanted to tell women, I ignored my symptoms the first 2 times. I got lucky the 3rd time. It was much stronger. I had heard a woman say women's symptoms are different than a man's, and it felt like an elephant pressing on my chest. And it felt like an elephant pressing on my chest. So I couldn't ignore it. Women, we're not on our own to-do list. You know, we always think, oh, it'll go away. Listen to your body and act on it, and I want you to be as lucky as I have been in this.
And better to be safe than sorry.
Absolutely.
Now, you were on the show since the start, and Erica Kane was notorious for the many men she had along the way.
You always have to bring that up. One guy.
But can you name all of your husbands?
I'll be over here.
How much time do we have?
Oh, let me see. Well, so Erica Kane, Martin Brent, Cudahy Chandler, Roy, Montgomery, Marek, This gets dicey towards the end.
There's another Montgomery.
There's another Montgomery, and then there was going to be another Montgomery.
Yes.
I went into double digits with this guy, and we were going for 11, right? When this man had the crosshairs of the rifle out.
Yes, I did. Yeah. You know, I mean, speaking of that, though,
I was never so happy to leave a scene.
Exactly.
Right before the gunfire started.
But speaking of weddings, the weddings are always so beautiful. That's one thing I remember the most about the shows, and I know the fans relate to that too because they were very epic. Guys were always dressed in nice, the wedding gowns, whether it's Vera Wang or Cavell. Yeah, I mean, couture.
We did ours in a beautiful remote in Florida.
We did.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then there was the time that you and Tad got married the second time, and we sodded the entire studio floor.
Wow.
And after the second day, it got really rank.
They forgot there were little things living in that sod.
Got wet. Somebody watered it.
Yeah.
And
all those dance scenes when we'd have parties when we would dance. Number one, we'd walk out there and we'd be dancing on carpet. That's not the same thing as dancing on a floor. And then we could never hear the music. And we would say, could you just play a few bars of the music? Just let us know what we're dancing to, because it was like Dance Fools Dance.
So if there were rhythmic problems, it was not your fault.
If somebody's off beat, it's not because of you.
They may be good actors, but they don't have a rhythm in their body.
But the thing is, like, even seeing this, and you guys are just talking about memories from the show and behind the scenes, when you see each other, is it like you don't miss a beat?
Yeah, exactly.
Totally, completely. It's such a touchstone. It's such an anchor, just energetically. It's like, oh my God, you're helping me through so much.
It's true. In the trenches together. And Jill and I, we were on roller skates. I mean, it was a lot of full-length play a day. So we wanted to rehearse, and we'd yell at each other across the hair and makeup room with, hair dryers whirling. Hi, want to run lines? Oh, but we can't. And Jill and I would see each other in the hallway. Sometimes we're running in our robes to get ready. And I remember Jill said to me one day, I'd love to talk to you, but we can't make eye contact. Can't do it now. Gotta go.
I can't make eye contact, or I'll start to water and the makeup will go.
All that. No time to fix.
What is life like after All My Children? For all of you.
Yeah.
Well, life has been great. I mean, there is life after All My Children. I do miss these people terribly. Yeah. I've shot 5 movies this last year.
Whoa.
I'm partnering with one of the leading kids academies here in New York, Actors Technique in New York, and I'm opening a new studio in Salt Lake.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
I did a movie called Seeing is Believing Women Direct about women directors. Trying to support women. It's a documentary, and it's playing here at the Socially Relevant Film Festival in March, and then at the Artemis Film Festival in Los Angeles in April.
I will look for you.
Thank you.
Yes,
I'm very excited about it.
I went back to my hometown and revived the community theater there and started a children's theater there and wrote and have been touring with a one-man show called Wild Bill, an evening with James Butler Hickok, which has been a lot of fun since 2012.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing.
Whatever.
Jill's worth of Scorsese. And I got to do Devious Maids for 4 years with Mark Cherry and all around the world, and that was fantastic. And I've been doing some stuff here in New York and on Broadway, Celebrity Autobiography, which is hysterical. When it comes back, please, it's just the funniest night in the theater. And I just have a development deal with Hallmark, and I'm just starting on the first of a series of movies.
Everybody's so busy. We're happy you took the time to stay here with us, but you're not going anywhere.
No.
We're going to have some fun when you come back, because we're going to perform some of your favorite scenes. No, they are. They're going to perform some of your favorite scenes from All My Children when we come back. We'll be right back, everybody.
Today is the day and it's gonna be great. The clouds are as fluffy as the eggs on your plate. With Daisy, there's a better way. Go out and squeeze today. The next thing you know, it's a quarter to noon. You need a quick bite, but you don't need a spoon. You can dip or dial up your way. Go on and squeeze today. You can do it cool, you can do it crazy. Life tastes better when you do it with Daisy. Choo-choo, a dial up with Daisy.
Most homeowners draw a blank when asked what their home projects should cost. That's why at Home Advisor, you can see what others paid for similar jobs in your area. Start your next home project knowing what you should pay. Go to homeadvisor.com or download the free app.
Ooh. Living with ammonia odor? Not a pretty picture. Tidy Cat's lightweight with ammonia blocker tackles tough odor. Now 100% dust-free.
So long, stink face. Bye-bye, dust.
There's a Tidy Cats for that.
Your brain changes as you get older, but Prevagen helps your brain with an ingredient originally discovered in jellyfish. In clinical trials, Prevagen has been shown to improve short-term memory. Prevagen, healthier brain, better life.
What is he doing?
You better not be messing up our taxes.
At H&R Block, you have your own screen, so you can see your credits, deductions, and tax tips.
We need that now.
Know as you go at H&R Block. See your credits, deductions, and tax tips. Block has your back.
Mom! Now you can lotion up on wet skin. Jergens Wet Skin Moisturizer. It absorbs just like that.
I locked the door.
Locks. And you're soft all day.
That's awesome.
You know who else is awesome? You. Jergens, let your beautiful shine.
Chili's 3 for $10 presents our signature sirloin steak, aged to perfection and served with a starter and drink for just $10. Dinner with Mom, Dad, Grandma, and her friend Randy, who seems to be a little more than a friend. Together, we Chili's.
How would I describe overpaying on a used car? It's humiliating, and it's expensive.
Only Carfax.com can give you the most accurate price based on the Carfax report. Stop the shame of overpaying and start your used car search today at Carfax.com.
I was on the fence about changing from a manual to an electric toothbrush, but my hygienist said going electric could lead to way cleaner teeth. She said get the one inspired by dentists, with the round brush head.
Go pro with Oral-B. Oral-B's gentle rounded brush head removes more plaque along the gum line for cleaner teeth and healthier gums. And unlike Sonicare, Oral-B is the first electric toothbrush brand accepted by the ADA for its effectiveness and safety.
What an amazing clean. I'll only use an Oral-B.
Oral-B. Brush like a pro.
Our heartbeats boom, boom, boom. If we want this thing to work, we're gonna need to connect.
I don't do emotional attachments.
I hate to tell you, you have a heart and the capacity to feel.
This is what happens when you believe in true love. Idiot!
Is she always like this?
No, she's usually meaner.
Whiskey Cavalier. Series premiere tonight, 10/9 Central on ABC.
Tell you one thing, living on the ranch ain't easy, but it sure is fun.
I'm here trying to find an audition dress. Okay, bye, baby.
I live in Midfield, Texas, and this is what I do all day.
Okay, we're ready for you.
Let's see what you got.
We're stuck in a ravine during a windstorm. And no one knows we're out here.
I can't feel the legs.
Oh, no.
Search and rescue, let's go.
I just want to get to them.
If you get hurt, I won't be able to go out after you.
Station 19, winter premiere, Thursday, March 7th on ABC.
This is a battlefield. You're on the best attorneys in this country, and you come together to fight for justice.
I need a lawyer.
Give us a minute. Someone just killed a United States senator.
Yeah, that was me.
You are going to take this assailant down.
He has no criminal history. This is the case. We work the case.
We're not machines. We don't just plug in facts. We work for justice, for the people.
Season premiere, Thursday, March 7th on ABC.
Please don't walk out on me, Jack. I need you.
Frankly, Erica, I don't give a damn what you need.
Whoa! Welcome back to the show, everybody. You just saw one of the most iconic scenes from All My Children. It's a show that's left a legacy in daytime and also in the hearts of its greatest fans. And we would like to pay tribute by having these memorable characters recreate two of its most famous scenes.
Take it away. All right, yes. I don't want to get married. Much as I want to be with you, I don't want to rush into some wedding just to reassure you that I'm not going anywhere.
So you finally admit it. Well, I wish you all the best of luck in L.A. and with the rest of your life. Without me.
Jack! Jack, wait! Jack, please don't go. I love you. I said come with me. Jack, please don't walk out on me. I need you.
Well, frankly, I don't give a damn what you need, Erica.
Oh, no. No, this is not the way I want it to end. No, it's not the ending I want.
Done it this time, Missy. You're never gonna get him back now.
Watch me.
How the hell with it? Come here, you. That's the ending you wanted, right? Okay.
Oh, my goodness.
How you do?
That felt
intimate. Like,
I literally was over here. I was like this all the time.
Did I have a great job or what?
Oh, man, you're lucky, man, you. Great job by everybody.
Yeah. That was amazing. You feel like you're peeping in on someone's.
I
know.
With at least the safety of your living room, it's a more private.
No, before yours, right? No matter how you cut.
Now you guys are up.
Okay, ready? All right. I need pancakes.
Now
Pancakes.
you'll be recreating the scene where Dixie appears to die with her son JR by her side. We have that clip. Take a look.
Yeah, it's a very light scene.
I've had his child. We'll never stop looking for Kate. Honey. Look, Kate.
Mom, Tad told me to come back for you. Now you've got to come back for Tad, Mom. You got to come back for Tad. Come on, where is the ambulance? Listen to me. You're going to be okay. I promise.
Just stay out of my camera.
Am I in your lens?
Give Tad his child.
We're never going to stop looking for Kate.
No, not Kate. Not Kate. Crystal's baby. It's Tad's.
What? Mom, please! Mom, please don't leave me!
I'm okay.
Little gas?
Yes.
Oh, man.
Must have been something you ate.
Oh, boy.
This was
Well
one
done.
of the outtake scenes.
And well done. Everybody.
Come over.
You know what? Before we go, come on over. Before we go, we just wanted to give a shout out to some of our crew here on our show. Because a lot of them work on All My Children. Yeah, they're your crew. So come on up, crew. Come on. Come on. What a treat for us. So thank them so much. We'll be right back, everybody. We'll be right back.
karaoke later, and you're gonna sing.
Jamie, this is your house?
I know, it's not much, but it's home. Right, kids?
Kids.
You didn't tell me your friends were coming?
Oh, yeah.
This one is tiny like a child.
Yeah, she is. Oh, but seriously, it's good to be surrounded by what matters most. A home and auto bundle from Progressive.
Oh, sweetie, please, play for us.
Oh, no, I couldn't. Okay.
We all care about amazing taste. That's why we've been making the best mayonnaise for over 100 years. Best Foods. We're on the side of food.
There it is, the coffee ring. It's been sitting there all week. And just like that, it's shining. Look at you. Beautify it with Pledge. SC Johnson.
Allergies with sinus congestion and pressure? You won't find relief here. Go to the pharmacy counter for powerful Claritin D. While the leading allergy spray only relieves 6 symptoms, Claritin D relieves 8, including sinus congestion and pressure. Claritin D relieves more.
Nutro. Non-GMO ingredients, no artificial flavors. All the energy dogs need and nothing they don't. Nutro. Feed clean.
I work hard to protect this tuchus, to take care of any messy situations, and put irritation in its place. And if I can get comfortable keeping this tuchus safe and protected, you can get comfortable doing the same with yours. Preparation H. Get comfortable with it.
Around here, nobody ever does it.
I didn't do it.
So when I heard they added Ultra Oxy to the cleaning power of Tide, it was just what we needed.
Dad, I didn't do it.
#1 stain and odor fighter. #1 trusted. It's got to be Tide.
Finally, something that works. Helped all my digestive problems.
My immune system says thank you.
People don't just say this about any probiotic. Culturelle promotes digestive balance and immune defense with the proven probiotic. It's #1 for a reason.
There's nothing quite as magical as staying at a Disney Resort hotel. So imagine complimentary rides to and from the park, even extra time with your family in the park. And now you can save up to 30% on rooms at select Walt Disney World Resort hotels. So if you're not staying here, just think what you might be missing.
Everyone wants to be the Cadbury bunny, because only he brings delicious Cadbury cream eggs, while others may keep trying. No bunny knows Easter better than Cadbury.
I landed. I saw my leg did not look right.
I was just finishing a ride. I felt this awful pain in my chest. I had a PE blood clot in my lung. I was scared.
I had a DVT blood clot. Having one really puts you in danger of having another.
My doctor and I chose Xarelto.
Xarelto to help keep me protected.
Xarelto is a latest generation blood thinner that's proven to treat and reduce the risk of DVT or PE blood clots from happening again. In clinical studies, almost 98% of patients on Xarelto did not experience another DVT or PE.
Xarelto works differently.
Warfarin interferes with at least 6 of your body's natural blood clotting factors. Xarelto is selective, targeting just one critical factor. Don't stop taking Xarelto without talking to your doctor, as this may increase risk of blood clots. While taking, you may bruise more easily or take longer for bleeding to stop. Xarelto can cause serious and, in rare cases, fatal bleeding. It may increase your risk of bleeding if you take certain medicines. Get help right away for unexpected bleeding or unusual bruising. Do not take Xarelto if you have an artificial heart valve or abnormal bleeding. Before starting, tell your doctor about all planned medical or dental procedures and any kidney or liver problems.
Learn all you can
to help protect yourself from another DVT or PE.
Talk to your doctor about Xarelto.
Real cheese people are ham and Swiss people. They're hot and cold, big and bold, but they would never make a sandwich with pasteurized processed cheese food. Sargento slices are 100% real natural cheese.
Sargento. We're real cheese people.
The body of Jessica Meyer, the girlfriend of Sevy Johnson, was found 5 days ago.
I wanted to write The Fix because it really does wrap in all of my life experience. I lived through a high-profile media circus.
All eyes will be on us, so no misses.
It tells the story of what goes on beyond the TV cameras.
I'm an innocent man.
Tear the place down to the studs.
Is this a revenge fantasy? Maybe.
that it could be a plot on all my children. Senior editor of Real Simple magazine, Brandy Broxson, sent her DNA in for ancestry testing on a whim, and you'll never believe the surprise she received. Here to tell us the story is senior editor of Real Simple magazine, Brandy Broxson.
Yeah.
Hi. So this story really is like crazy to comprehend.
It's incredible.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Now, you and your brother always knew your father was a sperm donor growing up.
We did. It was never a secret. I don't remember us sitting down as a family and having that conversation, but it was just always brought up. Someone in my class would say, oh, you must be tall like your dad. And my parents would use that as like a gentle reminder to us that he's not our biological father.
Okay.
But it was something that I was always curious about. My parents asked me if we had questions about it. I really didn't until I got older and wanted to learn more. And then last year I set this goal to do the things that made me uncomfortable. And that was one of those things. So when I got an email from a family history company asking if I wanted to do a DNA test, I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. This is my chance.
So you took a risk. You sent in the test.
Yes.
What were the results?
Yes. So I actually got to meet with a genealogist when I got the results back. And I went in to meet with her, and I really thought that she was just going to tell me, like, oh, you're 20% Polish or 10%
like
this
the
or whatever.
Tell you.
Exactly. I just pictured like a pie chart of percentages. But when I met with her, I could tell that she knew a little bit more. And they had seen my family tree, and they knew that I didn't know my biological father's side of the family. So she told me when we first started talking that when my DNA went into the system, that I got messages. I started receiving messages, and they were from half-siblings. Yeah, yes.
Wow.
They messaged me and said, we matched as close family. Did your parents use a donor? I think that we're half-siblings.
So what did you do when you heard it? Did it freak you out a little bit when you heard that?
It was really hard to believe, yeah. So I had always thought about the biological father, but didn't really think of these half-siblings that I probably had. And so Mike was one of them who had sent me a message, and I went and looked at his Facebook profile with the genealogist, and I was like, wow, we look alike.
Well, because you discovered 10 total half-siblings.
Yes, 10 total.
One of which was working in the building you work in.
Yeah, so that's Mike. So Mike is the oldest brother.
Okay.
And yeah, we work in the same building.
Mike's here. Do you want to come up?
Yeah.
Mike, come on up.
Come on up, Mike. Good to see you, man. Thank you for being here.
It's nice to see you.
So you two half-siblings, work in the same building, had no idea, but what was it like when you two finally met?
Yeah, so it was kind of funny because we talked on Facebook a little bit before, and Mike was like, oh, I live in Brooklyn, and I was like, oh, I live in Brooklyn too, and he was like, oh, well, I work in Manhattan, and I was like, so do I, and he was like, well, I work at Brookfield Place, and I was like, so do I. So I'm on the 9th floor, Mike is about 30 floors above me, and I feel like as a journalist, I'm trained to be skeptical, so when he told me that we worked in the same building, I didn't like totally 100% believe him until I saw him that day that we met walking from the elevator bank. And I was like, wow, he really does work in my building. So, yeah, we met. We went out for drinks at a little dive bar close to our building. It was pretty incredible, that first meeting.
And how's it been for you, Mike, this whole experience?
It's been remarkable, to be quite honest. So I got the DNA test as well last Christmas. I sent it in. At that time, it took about 8 weeks. I matched with one sister. I was riding the subway home, and I found out I had a new sister. And to me, that was unbelievable. And then within a couple days, I matched with another person, another brother. When I spoke to him, he actually knew a couple other siblings as well. So they were brought into the fold. And this whole thing has just kind of amalgamated in this gigantic Facebook messaging like chat group.
Was there any talk of like a reunion? Are you going to meet all of them at the little dive bar by the building?
Right. It's something that we've talked about because we're all over the country. And so we've kind of talked about like Texas being the central, point for us to meet. But yeah.
Well, we want to give you guys, we want to do a recap on all of this, okay? So to give you all a full picture here, there are 11 total siblings. They're spread across the country. You have Brandy right here, then Mike and his brothers Patrick and Cooper, Joe in upstate New York, then Dustin, Caitlin, Owen, Whitney, Allie, and the latest addition, Shannon. You all range in age from 30 to 18 years old. Wow.
And we got to know Shannon over a week ago, just about a week ago. Yeah, we matched with her as close family on the DNA site, so it's been quite a ride.
Well, we wanted to see all of this happen. We really wanted a reunion so badly, so we decided to make it happen here. Come on out,
Former longtime fixer and personal attorney Michael Cohen says he protected the president for a decade, but it was time to start telling the truth.
What was the breaking point at which you decided to start telling the truth?
Helsinki, Charlottesville, watching the daily destruction of our civility to one another.
Cohen facing 3 years in prison after pleading guilty to breaking campaign finance laws and other crimes. He says at the direction of President Trump.
Because I know what Mr. Trump is. He is a racist, he is a con man, and he is a cheat.
Today, Democrats are locked in on Cohen's campaign finance violations, President Trump's role, and the timing of the hush money payments he arranged for 2 women who say they had an affair with Trump. Affairs Trump has denied.
Can anyone corroborate what you have shared?
Keith Davidson, Alan Weisselberg, President Trump.
Republicans, however, more focused on reminding the public that Cohen is a convicted felon and liar.
When you failed to report $4 million in income to the Internal Revenue Service, did you do that to protect Donald Trump?
No, I did not.